We will destroy everything in our path until he is found.
You seem agitated.
Who hired this crew? This is undoubtedly the seediest bunch of cutthroats, villains, and scoundrels I have ever seen, so who hired them?
Hi there. How you sleeping? Good? Gentlemen, listen up, y'all. Here's the new plan. You're gonna start a riot, and we're gonna walk out the front door.
Hey, man. I know guys on crack that makes more sense than you.
Really? Then let me put it to you this way, cuz. Yeah. I don't know how to be. No crib on MTV. God only knows. Got my mini-me in the GP. See how it goes. Evil's all that I see. You ask me my name? G to the Rizzo, E to the Bizzo, I to the Lizzo. I'm a crazy... You all knew that. Austin caught me in the first act. It's all backwards. What's with that? So I'll make a prophecy from the dogs to the mini-me. Give me an Escalade or 2-8 bling-bling on eBay. Domino. Yeah. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Uh-huh. It's for all my homies in Bruges. Cristal, my moto, a couple of bee hutches. Why not? I got a buster move, dropping buster groove, feeling fine. Got an evil crew, gold member to lick my 9. Till then, I'll on my butt, brains up, put on call and splooge in your app. That's all. For shizzle my nizzle, y'all.
The sound of the cannon.
Attention! On the count of 3. 1.
So to begin.
Such a crick in the neck!
Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
Everybody comfortable?
Yeah.
Get your motherfucking ass up when I'm talking.
And here we go.
Hello again to the absent-minded professor. Today is going to be a big one. This was Star Wars was my favorite franchise growing up. I read everything, watched everything multiple times. Immersed myself in this world. I could not get enough of it. Posters on my wall. There were drawings on my wall that I did of characters from the comics. Fell in love with the expanded universe. and collected all the action figures. Like, I would ask for them for Christmas, and then when I was making my own money, I'd buy them all the fucking time. So, uh, the Legos, I got the Legos, Funko Pops, and Disney has managed to run this franchise into the ground, and I've gotten kind of apathetic to it now, like, to, watching the new content that comes out, because they managed to destroy a lot of the characters that I love, like, and, but, yeah, at first, I thought, "Oh, okay, this is gonna be awesome," because Disney, up until, 2014, 2015, something like that, when they bought Lucasfilm, Disney was still respected as a company, as a brand. They were still putting out good quality content. They were putting out their Pixar films, and they were still great, in my opinion. And they were still, I don't think they were doing they might have been doing some live action remakes at that point. I remember Alice in Wonderland, I think, was coming out around the time they acquired Marvel. So, yeah, I think they had started already. But, yeah, I was still enjoying most of their content, and then Marvel, of course, was doing great. Like, that was around the time, Guardians of the Galaxy came out, so they were on a roll. Uh, but then I heard the news that they were nixing the Star Wars Expanded Universe and rebranding it as Legends, and that kind of turned me off. But I got over it. Like, I should have taken that as a huge red flag. I got over it pretty quickly when I saw the first footage of Force Awakens. I'm like, okay, this looks interesting. This looks cool. Who is this guy? This stormtrooper guy. Uh, and then I started getting the figures for Force Awakens. I got Finn with his armor on and his mask off, and the mask has, the blood smeared across it like in the movie. It was one of my favorite figures. And then I got Ray and BB-8. I'm wondering who these characters are, what their stories are gonna be. And I think those are the first two figures I got for that. And that, I'd get the 3.75-inch figures too. And then we saw some more footage. We saw Han say, "Chewie, we're home," and that got me, man. The member berries, there's a whole South Park story arc concerning member berries, like actual berries that, it's like, "Hey, you remember? I remember," and they, spout off all kinds of shit like nostalgia things like, "Remember Jabba the Hutt? Remember the Rancor? Remember?" And that's basically all The Force Awakens was. Like, you remember these characters, right? You love these characters, right? You're gonna see these characters do some cool shit. Yeah, but you hardly ever saw them do anything. That that was the disappointment. Like, in the long run, like, that was a huge opportunity wasted. You had the 3 original characters that everybody loved back. Well, they're not even back together. You never see them in a scene together, all 3 of them. You see Luke and Leia in The Last Jedi, and he's not even there. He's not really there. Uh, but yeah, J.J. Abrams got given a monumental task of bringing back the Star Wars saga, and they even dissed the prequels in the first line of the movie. They're like, "This will begin to make things right." So I didn't realize that at the time, but somebody pointed that out, and I'm like, "Yeah, that is true." They're saying those last 3 movies that came out were shit, which I did not agree with. I love the prequels. I was a huge fan of the prequels, and while they were coming out, I was reading all the comics and really loving the characters like Kit Fisto, Mace Windu, Qui-Gon Jinn, of course. Quinlan Voss was another one. He was a background character in Phantom Menace who got expanded upon, in the comics, and George Lucas actually, took to him. that's one of my favorite characters from Expanded Universe, Quinlan Voss. And Ayla Sakura, who is his apprentice. She's the blue Twi'lek that showed up at the Battle of Geonosis. And other ones like Kiadi Mundi and Apo Rancisis, the snake-looking guy. A lot of characters that came out of the prequels that I love, and even Jar Jar I liked. I know a lot of people hate that character, but I enjoyed him. I thought he was funny. I was young when that came out. I was like 9. Yeah, when that came out. Yeah, but I loved the expansion of the lore, everything with the council, and even midichlorians. I didn't have a problem with. They're just a way to tap into the force. They don't actually explain like what the force is, so it's not really um what do you call it? Disenchantment of the mythos. It's just a way of explaining how the body taps into the force. Like that's all the midichlorians are. So I didn't think it was demystifying anything. And so I thought Lucas did a good job of expanding on the lore, and then with every movie he introduced something new. He introduced new environments, new planets, new characters. Like Grievous came in episode 3, although we did see him in the Charge of Clone Wars 2003 series, which was awesome. That was I saw it on Cartoon Network, and then later got the DVDs. That's a great series. But yeah, Grievous was kind of more of a badass in that. But I still love the character in the movie too, and the Clone Wars series, the other Clone Wars series, the 3D animated one. So I didn't mind sometimes when George would contradict his own lore sometimes. Like stuff that happened in the 2003 series would be contradicted in the 3D animated series. But I didn't mind because I was like, okay, this has always kind of been loosey goosey. The expanded universe, like some things that happen may not make a whole lot of sense because they might contradict something else. But I was still enjoying it because there were a lot of good stories that came out of the expanded universe. Like we got there was a story about like the Death Star plans before Dash Rendar getting the plans. That was retconned by Rogue One, where we got Jyn Erso and what's his name, Cassian Andor. But yeah, I still was kind of on board. I'm like, okay, I'll try to shuffle this off to the side. Like okay, we got 2 timelines going. We got the expanding universe timeline, Legends. Maybe they'll continue that. Maybe they won't. Apparently, they didn't continue that. I just like I was like, okay, okay. I'm still willing to like follow this new timeline and see where it goes because um they were mostly concerning like the original trilogy, like right around that time. I'm like, okay, I still care about these characters. Like, I want to see where their adventures go. And the comics were good. The Marvel comics they put out, the Star Wars mainline comics. So I was enjoying those while the movies were coming out. Last Jedi came out, and I actually enjoyed that. I did not, see it for what it was. It was an assassination of, of some of the characters I love, but because it was pretty and I liked the action and a lot of the dialogue, with the about the Jedi and the Sidious and whatnot. I was taken with it, and then Yoda showing up, of course, I love that. But yeah, I was making excuses for it. I realize that now. Like, and then when Rise of Skywalker came out, by that time I'm like, okay, but maybe they can salvage this. Like they've killed Han Solo badly, and they've made Luke look like a bitch, basically. He's he's left the Jedi Order behind him. He's gone to live on this island by himself and just be a grumpy old man. He's refused to help with the resistance, refused to help his sister, and he tried to kill his nephew in his sleep. Like this is not making Luke look like a good guy at all. And you'll see Kathleen Kennedy now in interviews say, "Oh, Luke Skywalker, he's a cautionary tale." Like what? No, bitch. He was never meant to be that. You are. Never mind. I'm trying not to go off on a huge rant here. I'm just trying to get through this timeline. Uh, so these movies. Okay, Force Awakens comes out. It's a huge hit. It makes over $2 billion. Probably could have made more if you had actually had adventures together instead of trying to focus on these new characters first. Like you could have introduced them and maybe had them be mentored by the older characters more. Like what I heard was they wanted to make each character have their own movie. Like Luke's was gonna be well, Hans was gonna be the first one, and it was pretty much. And then Luke's was gonna be the second one. He was mostly yeah, prominent in the second one. And then Leia's was gonna be the third one, but yeah, they the first hiccup was well, it's not really a hiccup, it's a huge fucking disaster, was Carrie Fisher passes away. And that was a huge blow. Not only to the fandom, but to the story group because they didn't know how to fucking proceed from there. They had to, salvage something from the wreckage that was the story that they they came up with on the fly. They didn't have an outline. Oh yeah, that was another. I've talked about this in other streams before, but that was another mistake they made was just abandoning the story that George Lucas came up with. He gave them an outline for a story for the sequel trilogy, and they basically just put it in a vault and said, "Okay, we're never using that. Like, we'll come up with our own stuff, and it'll be great." Yeah, but Lucas was under the impression that they would at least look at his treatment. So, like when he made the deal with Bob Iger, like, and Iger said, "We're under no obligation." He actually told Lucas that. At least that's what he says in his book, The Right of a Lifetime. He told Lucas, "We're under no obligation to use these." Okay, like let's be clear. And then when The Force Awakens comes out and Lucas goes to the premiere, he feels betrayed. Like he feels, like his everything was for naught basically. Like they're not actually going to be good stewards of my of my baby, my franchise, my life. This was his life's work that he sold off to Disney, and I'm sure he regrets it now. I mean, I'm sure the money was good. He's rolling in it, but like that's gotta hurt because it's something you've worked your entire life for and embraced. I mean, I'm sure he felt. I have no idea how he felt about the response to the prequels because there were a lot of people that did not like the prequels. However, there were a shit ton of people, probably more people that loved them, like I did, and they've actually gotten more of a positive response in recent years, especially after the sequels. Like in comparison to the sequels, the prequels look like gold. I mean, they are in comparison to the sequels. Uh, but yeah, uh, here is okay. We're gonna go through this. There's a lot to go through because it's very complicated. It's very nuanced. Everything that Disney's done to water down to basically devalue this brand. Yeah, we start with wait, cancel. Let me see. I'm going to bring this up. It's the first announcement that they came out with, like the that the books were no longer being used. The expanded universe and whatnot. Disney's going to nuke all the Star Wars books. I remember reading this and being like, wait, what? No, no. Like, I was reading all those books, man. I was reading through them in high school, I remember. Like, I'd be in class reading these books and enjoying the hell out of them. And I was still reading them after Disney bought Lucasfilm because they were still coming out with them. Like, there were a couple releases after the acquisition because they were already planned. And I think one of them actually has the Legends moniker on it because because it was released after the purchase. That was Kenobi, I think. Yeah, Kenobi, which actually tells the story of Kenobi watching over Luke after episode 3, and he gets into like misadventures. Like he gets into there's like a range war between the settlers and the Tusken Raiders, and he gets involved in that. And in the comics, he actually like gets involved in disputes with Jabba and stuff. It's so there's a lot of neat stuff they could have played around with, but instead they chose to go the Leia gets kidnapped route. It didn't go over well, and it was poorly written too. That never helps. Lucasfilm, which now owned by Disney and is working on a new trilogy of Star Wars movies, announced Friday that is essentially killing off the vast series of books, comics, and video games that have spun off the original Star Wars movies. Most of that extra material, commonly referred to as the expanded universe, explains what happens after Return of the Jedi, the third movie in the we know that. Disney's new trilogy of Star Wars movies will begin with Episode 7 and will be the official sequels to Return of the Jedi. In order to keep the storyline fresh and exciting, Disney decided to throw out the events that happened in the expanded universe and start over. After all, what would be the point of watching the new movies if we already know what's going to happen thanks to the expanded universe? That's a moot point though for a lot of people that do not read the books. They wouldn't have known what the fuck was going to happen because it's a lot of casual fans, or not even casual fans, but they might be hardcore fans, but they don't necessarily read all the how do you say, the extra material. Not everybody does. But we already had a good story, the Heirs to the Empire series, which they could have adapted. Like that would have been awesome. Now here we are, years later, and they're cherry picking the stories. It's kind of funny when you think about it. Moving forward, Lucasfilm Disney will have a group of people tasked with making sure future Star Wars cartoons, books, comics, video games, etc., fall within the official storyline. That official storyline now only includes the 6 existing Star Wars movies, episodes 1 through 6, and the Clone Wars cartoon series that aired on Cartoon Network. Now, that Cartoon Network series they're talking about is the 2010, something like that. The 3D animated one, not the 2003 Cartoon Network series. They should have been more specific there. But I guess a lot of people didn't watch the 2003 one, so they wouldn't be aware of it. All the other expanded universe material that has been published over the years will continue to exist, but will be rebranded under the Star Wars Legends banner. So all this happened, right after the acquisition. Lucas always made it clear that he was not beholden to the EU. Yeah, but he still respected it though, and like he put his stamp on it. Basically, like he was still the final say in what happened. Like yeah, the expanded universe really got cranking once it became clear George Lucas wasn't going to make any sequels to The Return of the Jedi. That gave sci-fi writers the right to license Star Wars and its characters to come up with what happens to Luke Skywalker and crew after the final movie. But when Disney announced it was buying Lucasfilm in 2012 and planned to make a new Star Wars trilogy, it didn't make sense for the company to adhere to the expanded universe material. Yeah. Yeah, maybe in the short term it wouldn't have made sense, but in the long term, I think you've shot yourself in the foot. Like you had a dedicated fan base already, and you decided, nah, we're gonna push them aside. Like, fuck them. We want a new fan base. That, this imaginary fan base. Which brings me to my next topic. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy says she doesn't need to cater to male Star Wars fans. This is back in 2018. So this is after the release of not Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi and Solo, I believe. Yeah. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy was handpicked by George Lucas to carry his legacy into the future. Having worked with Lucas, as well as other industry giants like Steven Spielberg and her own husband Frank Marshall for decades on the franchises that fandom was built around, Kennedy was, in his opinion, the perfect choice when he opted to sell the company to Disney and leave it all behind. 4 years later, Kennedy has shepherded Lucasfilm to unprecedented success under the House of Mouse, with a $2 billion grossing film, a successful animated series, several books on the bestseller list, top-selling comic book series, and a revitalized toy and apparel market to the tune of $3 billion last year alone. How are those sales looking now? This is in 2018. With the Star Wars Story Group to hold things all together, and I'll get more into the story group in a second. And an increased focus on diverse casts to better represent the world around them, there's a lot for Kennedy to celebrate. So when criticism from a select group of fans at having a second female lead in a row, as Felicity Jones stars as Jyn Erso in Rogue One: A Star Wars Story next month, after Daisy Ridley starred as Rey in Star Wars: The Force Awakens started to hit, Kennedy paid it no mind. I have a responsibility to the company that I work with. I don't feel that I have a responsibility to cater in some way to those particular fans, Kennedy told the New York Times in an interview focused around Jones. I would never just seize on saying, well, this is a franchise that's appealed primarily to men for many, many years, and therefore I owe men something. Indeed, the franchise's fandom has balanced out significantly on the gender line over the decades, with Reed POP reporting that Star Wars celebration conventions of the last several years have been attended by nearly perfect 50-50 splits of women to men. How are those numbers looking now? Felicity Jones, meanwhile, pointed out that just as women are expected to or desired by Hollywood to relate to male leads, she hopes the reverse can be done for Jyn. Yeah, I didn't mind Jyn's character. I kind of liked her. They explained more about what was going on in the Catalyst novel. It's a prequel to Rogue One. Yeah, I know. Prequel to a prequel. But it's pretty good. So I loved Rogue One, especially the last 40 minutes where it really ramped up and got going. And things happened. But I didn't mind these characters. Like nobody minds a well-written female character. It's when they're badly written that people criticize. Like people like to conflate criticism of female characters with just them not liking female characters, and it's like no, we like them when they're well written, like Buffy, Xena, Sarah Connor. The list can go on and on. Lara Croft, Celine from Underworld. They actually have personality. They do things. They have their opinions. They give them. They and they affect the there. Uh, we want and they're actually feminine too. Like nobody likes a masculine woman. It's not appealing to a man. We wanted the audience to relate to Jyn as a person, whether you're a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, Jones said in the same feature. Like all of us, she's trying to work out what the hell to do. Yeah, I liked that she was kind of estranged from her father. She had no idea like what happened. She just figured he abandoned her, and then they ended up reconciling. Like I liked that. Kennedy came under fire last week by fans on both sides of the argument when she talked about her commitment to finding a female director for the Star Wars franchise in an upcoming film, but also expressed her desire to cultivate one from a pool of smaller features in TV, opining that there weren't many ready to handle a major tentpole on little experience. Yeah, that's the thing. You can cry and whine all you want about there being sexism in Hollywood, and there might be in some facets, but the I think the main thing, like the main I wouldn't say problem, but just the situation is there are more men like gunning for these jobs than there are women. That's just the reality, I think. Like I think more men go into sanitation work and offshore rigging and plant work than women. Just the same as there are more men wanting to be directors than there are women. Like it's not a hard concept to grasp, but they can't seem to grasp it though. They just want to keep pushing for more and more and more diverse everything. Well, not everything. I would say just the high level jobs, the more prominent jobs, the ones that people actually like look up to and don't look down on. Like they're not pushing for more female janitors, female sewage workers. Yeah. But we need more women directors, more women in STEM, more women doctors, all that stuff. Once, yeah. So yeah, she's just Kennedy's been an activist from the start, like just pushing for more and more women, more diversity, and everything. Oh, look at the lady interrupting. Okay, next. Oh, there's more to this. Don't worry. Now, here is an article trying to explain why they ditched the expanded universe, and we kind of touched on it. It's like they needed more creative freedom, quote unquote. Got to be creative though. Why Lucasfilm ditched the expanded universe? The first of many Lucasfilm moves. EU turned into Star Wars Legends. Dude, I hate these fucking sites. The ads make everything jump around and stop it. One of the first moves Lucasfilm made after being acquired by Disney was to remove the expanded universe from official Star Wars canon. This news was not met favorably by the contingent of Star Wars fans who had become heavily immersed in the EU. In many ways, it was the first move that both angered fans and placed a heavy burden on the sequel trilogy. Shit. Yeah, they put themselves in that situation. Another reason to move away from the EU was, and is, the casual fan. Not every fan of the series is devoted as fans of the EU. But that's the point, though. You could have adapted the novels, and there would be a shit ton of casual fans who had no fucking inkling what the story was, even, or who the new characters were, and still experienced it for the first time, like enjoyed it because it's a good story. Whatever. Having the prequel trilogy dive right into a storyline that the casual fan couldn't follow would have been disastrous. Not to mention, fans wouldn't be able to keep themselves from spoiling the film for others. And of course, reading whichever material selected for adaptation would allow a fan to spoil the film for themselves. But, okay, spoiling the film for others, that could have come from in any movie. Like you have Jurassic Park adapted, people could have spoiled that shit, even though it was kind of changed. But other adaptations like Little Women, people might spoil that, because it's based off of something else. Like you have a lot of movies that are based off of source material that somebody out there has read and could spoil it at any time to somebody. You could just rely on the audience not to do that. Some people will do that. Some people will be dicks, or they just won't realize that the other person has read it. But I don't know. I feel like they should have taken that chance. In hindsight, they should have taken that chance. Yeah, this is funny. There's no way that I don't. There's no way that I'd want to do an episode 7 that didn't have Chewbacca in it and have to explain that Chewbacca had a moon fall on his head. Well, that didn't take place until years after the Thrawn trilogy. So, yeah, you still have Chewbacca in the story and Heir to the Empire. Like whoever, yeah, this Leland Chi person, I guess hadn't read the EU because apparently he didn't realize that the New Jedi Order series takes place years after the Thrawn trilogy. But yeah, these are people they had in the story group. People that haven't read the fucking stories. Shit. This might get me upset. I don't know. We'll see. For me, it came down to simply that we had killed Chewbacca in the Legends. A big moon had fallen on him. Part of that original decision was Chewbacca because he can't speak and just speaks and growls. He was a challenging character to write for in novels. Publishing had decided they needed to kill somebody, and it was Chewbacca. I don't know if that's the reasoning behind the decision, or if they just wanted more conflict between Han and Leia, which it did kind of present more conflict, and then with the kids too, because the kids were partially responsible for Chewie dying. Like they were there when they weren't supposed to be, and yeah, Chewie was saving them. So Chewie went out kind of like a badass. He self-sacrificed himself, for some children. Like he saved them from the falling moon. But yeah, I didn't like that they killed him. That was the only thing in the EU that I was like, no, come on, dude. I love Chewie. Why? But then later they do kill some other characters that I was like, oh, come on, why again? Mara Jade. Spoiler alert, if you haven't read the novels, Mara Jade, who marries Luke. She was originally tasked with assassinating him by the Emperor. That was like the Emperor's contingency plan after he died. That was his last order to her, was to kill Luke. But they eventually fall in love. Like she's this loose ally of theirs, for years, and then they fall in love, and they have a kid named Ben Skywalker, who, if you read the comics, um, is the ancestor of 200 years later a character called Cade Skywalker, who goes on a series of adventures against more dark side users, Darth Krayt, Darth Talon, and then the Emperor Roan Fel. There's a shit ton of stuff that happened in Legends that I loved. That Disney just decided, yeah, we're gonna, fuck all this. We'll do our own thing, and look how it's gone. Yeah, I just thought it was funny that they they skipped the Thrawn trilogy. They said, "Okay, fuck this," and then Thrawn shows up in Rebels later. Like, while I was excited for that, he just wasn't as cool in Rebels as he was in the original novels. Like, yeah, yeah. Look, this comment at the bottom points out what's wrong with this picture here. The problem with this is that people were saying when this happened, we fans would get more Luke, Leia, and Han stories. Chewie never died and things would be better. Well, Luke dead, Han dead, Leia dead, and what about the other stuff not tied to the original trilogy? Yeah. Oh, man. Fuck. And then they have Chewie in the movies, but what's he doing? Like, is it is he is he really serving the story that much by being there? I mean, they probably could have killed him in that scene in Rise of Palpatine when he's on the ship and she thinks he's on the other ship and she thinks he's on that one that blows up. Like, you could have killed him there and like not affected the story at all. Like the way they were handling Chewie in the movies, because he was the guy just like holding the shit and staying on, flying the ship. Whatever. But yeah, they were mismanaging the characters from the start, basically. Okay, now this article. Well, no. First, I'm going to. Okay, I'm going to do this one. This Mark Hamill bit where he was talking about the sequel trilogy. Like you can find interviews from people that were involved in the sequel trilogy that realize like, oh, we made some mistakes. Like, but some of them like really had no say in where the story went. Like Mark Hamill, like he was just given a job to do and had to do it. Yeah. Mark Hamill says Lucasfilm is doing a pretty good job of killing the past with new Star Wars film, and that's the line, the takeaway line. Like, let the past die, kill it if you have to. Mark Hamill is once again making the publicity rounds. This was in 2019, yeah, March 2019. And even though the project he's promoting has little to do with a galaxy far, far away, in fact, it's something to do with nights called, appropriately enough, Nightfall. I love that series. I hated that it was canceled after season 2, but not the kind wielding lightsabers. Conversation still turns to Star Wars, and after everything that has transpired in the last 14 months since the release of The Last Jedi, there's a lot to talk about with Hamill. In a new interview with Den of Geek, the actor gives what sounds like final thoughts, hopefully final, as he has continued talking about it for over a year, on the Skywalker saga and the current state of Star Wars. And even though it seemed as if he was going to play nice after initial interviews, post TLJ were not complimentary of the film, Hamill is back talking about what he would have changed about the new films. However, before he gets to changes, Hamill explains why he feels the same way that many fans do when talking about Star Wars. I was once describing Star Wars fans, and I said they're passionate, they're opinionated, and they feel a sense of ownership because they've invested so much time in these characters and these stories. And I realized I was describing myself. Yeah, he has said that he was a fan of sci-fi, fantasy before he ever was in Star Wars, so I could see him taking ownership of the character that he played because he actually cared about the material. I can get you into trouble because I don't control the storylines. Oh, yeah, it can get you into trouble. Yeah. I'm sort of like a musician. I read the music and I try to play it to the best of my ability. That doesn't necessarily mean I like the tune, but that's not my job. How Yeah, okay. So what he's describing is kind of the way Henry Cavill feels about the parts he played. He actually really cares about them because he's immersed in the world. And yeah, I don't know if whatever, Mark Hamill was reading any of the books or whatnot. I don't think he was, but Henry Cavill is the sort of guy who does that. Like he gets fully immersed into these genre stories, like Warhammer 40K. He's a huge fan of that. Hoping that series is going to be good. He's an executive producer on it, so yeah, I'm hopefully optimistic. Oh, well, cautiously optimistic. But yeah, that's why we saw Henry Cavill leave the Witcher series because he realized they were not respecting the source material at all. They were downplaying Geralt in favor of Yennefer and making Ciri the center of the whole story. And yeah, basically sidelining is the main character. And to the point where they didn't respect it at all, to the point where one of the I don't know if it was Lauren Hisrich, the showrunner, or one of the other writers who decided we're gonna make this Roach death scene. We're gonna put a joke in there, give it some levity. And Henry was like, no, no, we need to make this heartfelt and meaningful, poignant. And that's when he pushed back, he actually got to change something that they were going to fuck up and made it one of the best scenes in the series. But ultimately, his hands were tied. He couldn't really push back that much, and yeah, they had their way, so he decided to leave. So now that we're getting this third season coming out, it's getting the trailer's getting ratioed on YouTube because people are not having it. They're like, okay, this is the last season. Screw you, Netflix, for doing this, for pushing away Henry Cavill. Well, it's kind of funny because he is the king of the nerds, and we hate to see him leave a project like that's why the DC is getting such a pushback too, because he got forced out of that. So hopefully, Warhammer 40K works out. Hopefully, Amazon doesn't, engage in fuckery, and he actually gets to do what he wants. Okay, this is bullshit right here. However, what he calls passionate and opinionated has morphed into abusive and hateful since the release of The Last Jedi. So we're going to guess Hamill wouldn't put himself in that toxic camp. Yeah, this word toxic gets thrown around a lot when it's discussing fandom. Brian Johnson calling fans man babies. Yeah, that didn't go over well either. Yeah, you'll just piss people off more if you do that. Like, I don't know if anybody was lobbying personal attacks against these creators or just calling out their shitty storytelling. But regardless, the hate, the abuse is usually a very, very small minority. Most of the fandom doesn't engage in that. We'll call out bad storytelling. We'll call out bad characters, not the actors, not the not the freaking directors themselves. Some people will, but like I said, that's a minority, a very small minority. He goes on to talk about some of the things that bothered him with the new trilogy. And perhaps unsurprisingly, the changes he would have made were more about his own wishes and maybe less about the story that Lucasfilm had in mind. Oh, and we'll get into Tamora Morrison's thoughts on Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian in a little bit, and some of the changes he probably would have made. I just thought Luke's never going to see his best friend again, said the actor, talking about Harrison Ford's Han Solo dying in The Force Awakens. There was actually a scene with Luke mourning Han that they cut out of the movie, which I thought was really stupid. Why would you cut that out? Like, Han didn't even get a funeral or anything. He got more of a funeral for a fucking no-name, well, not no-name, but he's got Wade in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, got more of a fucking funeral than Han Solo. What the hell? You look at it in a self-centered way. I said that it was a big mistake that those three people would never reunite in any way. I guess I was wrong. Because nobody seems to care. I have to stipulate that I care. Yeah, everybody cares. That's why the sequel trilogy is still being criticized to this day. Because people wanted to see these three characters together. But it didn't really seem to affect the larger audience. Oh, yes, it did. Because every movie after Force Awakens had diminishing returns. Like Last Jedi still made $1 billion, but it still didn't make as much as Force Awakens, and then Rise of Skywalker didn't make as much as The Last Jedi. Diminishing returns. And Solo bombed. We'll get into that too. He continued, Luke, Han, and Leia will never be together again, and I'll probably never get to work with Harrison again. Then the second thing was that they killed me off. I thought, oh, okay, you should push my death off to the last one. That's what I was hoping when I came back. No cameos and a run of the trilogy contract. Did I get any of those things? Because as far as I'm concerned, the end of 7 is really the beginning of 8. I got one movie. They totally hornswoggled me. I can see, I can understand that. Another change he wanted to make to the new films, particularly in The Last Jedi, was something that Hamill was able to fight for on set. And in describing the situation on the film, he echoes a line that seems to be the divisive theme that ran through the last Skywalker saga film. They had me walking by 3PO, not even acknowledging him, explained Hamill. I said, I can't do that. Brian Johnson said, okay, go over and do whatever. So I went over and I did whatever. They say it in the script, forget the past, kill it if you have to, and they're doing a pretty good job. It's very telling on his thoughts of the fucking sequels. Man. And this was before Rise of Palpatine came out. Yeah. Rise of Palpatine came out in December 2019. Yeah. Yeah, so it was Hamill's choice to walk by 3PO and wink at him. I loved that scene in the movie. That was one of my favorite scenes. See, a lot of times the actors can have good input on movies, but they're afraid to speak out. They're afraid to say anything. It's like you shouldn't be. Just say what you want to say if it'll serve the story, if it'll make sense and actually be rewarding, then say it. So we had that happen. We had Mark Hamill speak out a little bit on his thoughts about the sequels. Then, let's see. Let's see. Kathleen Kennedy. Oh yeah. I got trying to keep my timeline at least kind of chronological. I'm not trying to jump around too much. Did I touch on this at all? Let's see. Okay, so you had The Last Jedi come out. You had the response that it got. Very divisive movie. You'll hear that word thrown around a lot when discussing The Last Jedi. Then shortly afterward, just a few months later, Solo comes out and it bombs. Now, why did Solo, a Star Wars story, bomb? Well, there's a number of factors at play here. No one asked for this movie. No one asked for a Solo origin movie. There were plenty of people asking for like a Boba Fett movie. That was actually planned. James Mangold directing. There was demand for an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, which I think they took the script from that and completely changed it and then expanded on it. And that's what we got with the series, which is terrible. And also Book of Boba Fett was terrible. We'll get more into that in a little bit. But the Force wasn't strong with this one. The Millennium Falcon failed to achieve liftoff. That is to say, Solo, a Star Wars story, the standalone prequel to the reliably blockbuster Galaxy Far, Far Away franchise, arrived well short of financial expectations over its opening weekend in theaters. Estimated by pre-release tracking reports to pull in as much as $150 million over its 4-day Memorial Day weekend bow, the sci-fi thriller yielded a mere $101 million, according to ComScore, to become the lowest grossing first weekend for a Star Wars installment, adjusted for inflation, to date. Even worse, in an era when surging overseas ticket sales have taken up the slack for Hollywood's domestic movie misfires, the prequel, which cost around $400 million to make, that's crazy, and market, only delivered $68.2 million in foreign box office receipts. That's insane. Jesus. I had forgotten that it was this low. And that budget, that was way out of hand, that budget. But yeah, watch. I bet it goes into what happened behind the scenes. Under normal circumstances, any opening above $100 million would be cause to break out champagne on the backlot. But Star Wars is Disney's premium product, and Solo is showing every indication of underperforming previous franchise installments. So what happened? Bad word of mouth. Yeah, we'll see. Attempting to satisfy diehard. I actually liked this movie, by the way. I enjoyed watching this movie, and I watched it over and over again on Blu-ray. There are things in it that I don't like Solo getting his name from a random Imperial. Like Solo's last name was always Solo in the expanded universe Legends, and they retconned that with this fucking movie. but whatever. I did like that they kind of kept his meeting with Chewie consistent. Like Chewie was a former slave of the Empire who Han helped free. Like that part was consistent. And I liked the whole, the whole bet between Han and Lando, him losing the Falcon, all that part. And I didn't mind the droid, the activist droid. Like a lot of people hated that. But I thought it was weird though that they made Lando attracted to a droid. That was really weird. But yeah, I might get into that some more. We'll see. There's a lot of mismanagement that's been going on with Disney and Star Wars. We're just tipping the iceberg here. Attempting to satisfy die-hard Star Wars aficionados while wooing younger filmgoers with the Dickensian origin story of franchise fan favorite Han Solo, the film didn't make the jump to Lightspeed with many critics, clocking a lackluster 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. And arriving on the heels of December's less than ecstatically received The Last Jedi, amid a hive of negative buzz about Solo's legendarily troubled production, some fans viewed the space western as a cynical exercise in franchise expansion, with some diehards even actively rooting for Solo's floppage. Yeah, there was a boycott going on for this movie. Like, yeah, people calling for other fans to sit it out, and they actually did sit it out, a lot of them. But I was one of them that I went like the first weekend. I'm sure I did, because I was still fully in on this universe. Like, I didn't see the degradation going on to the franchise that I love. I didn't see it until well into Rise of Palpatine. Like, okay, this is not good. You have 3 movies basically vying for the same audience. Oh, yeah, with the Avengers, Infinity War, Deadpool 2. Yeah. Yeah, the release date for this was terrible too. Like, I understand what they were doing. They're trying to pay homage to the original release of Star Wars, which was in May, and release Solo in May, but it was a terrible time to release it because there were too many blockbusters coming out at the same time. And then people were soured after The Last Jedi, so it was just a bad combination. It wasn't. See, this guy said it's franchise fatigue, but no, it was just being soured from the last movie, and then never asking for this movie that put people off. Like, eh. Yeah, and then I guess people heard the spoilers. Like, Solo got his name from an Imperial officer. Like, what the hell is that crap? But yeah, the story could have been tighter. Ron Howard did what he could. He got given a project that was uh basically scrapped after like 70% of the production had been done. Lord and Miller, who had been working on it for a long time, were suddenly told, "Okay, you're fired. We gotta make something else." By Kathleen Kennedy, who has a horrible track record with directors, with writers, and just taking what they have and saying, "No, you got to change that, or you're fired." And a lot of them just leave because they don't want to work with her anymore. So we had that. Canon is broke. I have a lot of freaking tabs pulled up. Okay, now Book of Boba Fett came out before. Yeah, before Obi-Wan. But yeah, I'll show you the high. Okay, yeah, I'll talk about the High Republic too and all that mess. Let's see here. What my password? Yeah. But yeah, before I do that, I'm gonna get into what Kathleen Kennedy said about like not recasting the original trilogy characters. Why that was BS. Let's see here. Kathleen Kennedy says it's vital Lucasfilm move away from Skywalker Saga. This was in 2022, May 2022. We'll stop recasting legacy characters. Just saying within the construct But George's storytelling, to keep chipping away at that, I think would be wrong, the Lucasfilm president said in a recent interview about the story, the studio's narrative direction. Yeah, they've chipped away at it so much that it's just gotten it's just gonna be a nub of what it used to be. Man, fuck. Now, if this site would cooperate, oh my god, just expand the whole thing. Okay, there you go. Maybe that'll be better. It's still moving slow. Kathleen Kennedy says that following the negative reception to Solo, a Star Wars story, Lucasfilm is primarily focused on expanding George Lucas's universe beyond the Skywalker saga, and not looking to tell new stories with the iconic characters played by new actors. In a new interview with Vanity Fair, the president of Lucasfilm spoke about the lessons the studio has taken from the past decade of exploring a galaxy far, far away. That includes lessons derived from fan and critical backlash, among them the decision to cast Alden Ehrenreich as a young Han Solo after Harrison Ford originated the character and played him across numerous films. I did not mind Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. I thought he did a pretty good job with what he had to work with. And Harrison Ford even put his stamp on it and thought he did a good job, which you know, I thought was good. Like, you want to have the original actor actually, approve of what's being done with his character. As one of the first ideas that came up when the company was sold, Kennedy told Solo to screenwriter took Solo to screenwriter Larry Kasdan, whom she has known forever, and both genuinely believed at the time it was a good idea. So this is the only time I would say, man, I would question Larry Kasdan's credibility, man. Why would you take Solo's name? Never mind. Never mind. The whole name thing, I've tried to get over, but I haven't been able to. I thought that was really fucking stupid. But the decision to do an origin story for one of the franchise's most beloved characters ultimately ended up being a learning moment, and one that ultimately saw Donald Glover as a younger Lando Calrissian receive a lion's share of the Solo-focused film's praise. Yeah, he was a standout in that movie. He was great as Lando. Some people have talked about how, well, maybe Solo should have been a TV show. But even doing Solo as a TV show without Harrison Ford as Han Solo, it's the same thinking, Kennedy reflected. Maybe I should have recognized this before. We would never make Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. But you did before, though. I mean, they did before. George Lucas did. There was a young Indiana Jones series. Ugh. Having just finished the fifth movie, I can tell you there wasn't a day I wasn't on set where I wasn't like, yes, this is Indiana Jones. Yeah, but it's supposed to be Star Wars. Kennedy went on to say that the studio has now taken this approach with all of its classic Skywalker saga characters. We also can't go do something with Luke Skywalker that isn't Mark Hamill. Not true. They've done digitalized Luke Skywalker now. Like, they just put his face on another actor now. We're not going to suddenly go try to do that. It's just talking out of her ass. Because we'll get into the next article. This pivot is how the studio sees building out on the Star Wars universe was vital to the franchise going forward, she says. And it will impact whether fans see more chapters explicitly focused on the Skywalker saga. Just staying within the construct of George's storytelling. Yeah. That's what I said a while ago. We are moving on from the Skywalker saga. That's what's taking a lot of time, discussion, and thought right now. Kennedy also revealed that this changed outlook on how to grow the Lucas creative franchise has also been implemented, pointing to the studio's decision to do the Disney Plus Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which will be told through the singular vision of director Deborah Chow. Yeah, they changed that story. I'll get into that more. The beauty of Obi-Wan Kenobi is Ewan McGregor desperately wanted to do this. He has been so engaged in the entire process, and our excitement and reason for doing this is that the real Obi-Wan wanted to tell this story. We got excited by the idea that Ewan McGregor wanted to come back and Hayden Christensen wanted to come back. Just as fans, everybody inside the company was like, let's see if we can make this work. It didn't work. Spoiler alert. Again, they had this huge opportunity to get a shit ton of the fans back with a great story involving Anakin and Obi-Wan coming into contact again before the events of A New Hope. And they botched it. They really did. And we'll get into that more. right here. Ewan McGregor says Obi-Wan Kenobi series was originally about Luke Skywalker. Is anybody surprised by this? Well, Obi-Wan Kenobi surprised many by being a series that was centered around Kenobi and Leia. That was not always the plan. It is well documented that Disney Plus series Obi-Wan Kenobi started out as a potential movie trilogy before it was later developed into the show it became. This weekend, Ewan McGregor revealed that when the original movie idea was still in contention, the plot was focused on Kenobi and Luke Skywalker rather than Princess Leia as the series did. The change that would have made more sense for Kenobi to be watching over Luke, and so something happened there. The whole Leia getting kidnapped thing, it just felt like bullshit to me. Like the whole thing did not make sense. First of all, Kenobi would never leave Tatooine. He would never leave Luke behind like that. Secondly, Bail Organa would have called Ahsoka because she's working for the rebellion at that point instead of Kenobi. But people that know the lore would have known this. And these writers obviously did not. The change seemed to come while the movie was stuck in limbo after the poor box office performance of Solo, a Star Wars story. There we go again. In cinema. Hashtag Solo lost money. And the chance to tell a longer story on Disney Plus came up. It is probably fair to say that everything worked out for the best. No, it's not. Obi-Wan Kenobi brought Ewan McGregor back to screens on The Jedi for the first time in almost 2 decades, while the series did briefly feature a young Luke Skywalker, very briefly. He was certainly not the central character that everyone expected before the series premiered. As McGregor explained, though, it was only a moment of inspiration that saw the focus switch to a young Leia instead. During Fan Expo Boston, McGregor said, "It was going to be a story about me and Luke. It was always going to be that, and that was one of the genius moments where everyone went, wait a minute, and then changed it. I don't know if that was a genius moment or a really retarded moment. Like, you went full retard. Never go full retard. That's the beautiful thing about how passionate Disney, Lucasfilm, all of us are, who are involved with it, is from the beginning is, what the fuck is this sentence? We try really hard not to let anything of the bad just to protect your experience of seeing it for the first time." The fuck is he saying? I think it's really cool that Disney and Lucasfilm care so much for the fan experience. They really want you to have a 100% experience the first time you see it. And if you've read that and that leaked and this came out, it's just a bit of a shame, isn't it? It's like looking at your Christmas presents before Christmas Day. Although Obi-Wan Kenobi was planned as a limited series on Disney Plus, the fan response to the show has potentially gained McGregor another outing as the Jedi Master. Yeah, the Disney shills came in full force for like they saw them clashing with lightsabers and said, they squeed. Like a lot of the shit in the show did not make sense. The the decisions that Vader made, that Kenobi made, did not make sense. Bail Organa was destroyed as well as a character, and so was even Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen. Even, man, what the fuck? If you don't believe me, check out my videos on the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I did a series of videos on those. I go through the whole transcripts of the series if you haven't seen it. While there's also the possibility of Hayden Christensen getting his own Darth Vader spinoff, Kathleen Kennedy has revealed that discussions about Kenobi's future have been ongoing since the series aired, and another adventure would really rely on there being a story worth telling. She previously said, "Mainly because everybody came together and had such an incredible time. Ewan had an incredible time. Hayden had an incredible time. So certainly from that point of view, everybody involved would love to see this not in. They're going to have an incredible time, I'd wager. But we have to really spend our time asking the question, why would we do it? If we were to decide to do anything more with the Obi-Wan character, we'd have to really answer the question, why?" Yeah, I have a question. Why did you make this series? Because it's stupid. Ugh. My God. Which leads me to my next topic. Yeah. Here's well, here was the first statement that Tamora Morrison made about the Book of Boba Fett after it came out, and it was very telling. Like I remember people covering this and I was like, oh shit, he agrees with us. Like, Boba Fett is not as badass as he was in in this series as he was in like the expanded universe and whatnot. Which a lot of his adventures are covered in the expanded universe books and comics, and he is just that. He's like the man with no name. He's a complete badass, and he escapes from the Sarlacc, like we see in the Book of Boba Fett series, kind of like that. Only um, he does he does get help from Dengar, the other bounty hunter who's at the palace. You know, the one with the bandaged head. But yeah, he gets out with his armor, and somebody else takes his armor and starts claiming to be Boba Fett. Cobb Vanth, which was a character in the books who actually got used in the Mandalorian. I think that was his name, Cobb Vanth. Or no, there was another one. Jaster Muriel. My bad. I was getting him confused with another character. There were a couple of characters I think claiming to be Boba Fett, and then Boba Fett got his armor back and reclaimed Mandalore, became the Mandalore in the novels. Actually trained Han and Leia's daughter in Mandalorian ways. The fighting techniques and whatnot. Became kind of her mentor. That was in the Legacy of the Force series. If you haven't read those, there's a whole lot with Boba Fett in the expanded universe, and I'm wondering if Tamora Morrison actually read a lot of that. I mean, I feel like he's a big Star Wars fan. He's been in a shit ton of Star Wars, like he was Jango Fett, Attack of the Clones, and other media. I don't know if he was in the games or not. He might have been in. There was a Jango Fett game. I don't remember if he did the voice or not. But yeah, he's always been at these conventions. He's always embraced the role. And then he got to play Boba Fett. He was the voice of Boba Fett in the Blu-ray edition of Star Wars Special Editions. They replaced the original voice actor with Tamora Morrison. But the original voice actor, though, he still got his props. Though he showed up in episode 3, actually, as the pilot of the Tantive 4. But yeah, Tamora Morrison, like a lot of us, noticed Boba Fett is not the same, is he? I mean, it was cool to see him wreck stormtroopers at the end of Mandalorian season 2. That was awesome. Like that was one of my favorite parts. But then in the Book of Boba Fett, it's like he's not doing much. Fennec Shand is doing most of the work for him, and he just seems to to very casually just walk around like he's got not much to do. After opening his new chapter in the Book of Boba Fett, actor Tamora Morrison says it's time to get Boba Fett back to his badass ways. The feared Star Wars bounty hunter returned in season 2 of The Mandalorian, not any less lethal without his armor. The Gaddafi stick wielding warrior brutalized Imperial forces with Din Djarin and the assassin Fennec Shand in the Book of Boba Fett, set 5 years post Return of the Jedi. Fett claimed the throne of Jabba the Hutt as the daimyo of Tatooine's Mos Espa, who would rule with honor and respect, not fear. Which I didn't think that was very in character for Boba Fett, but whatever. Asked about his Star Wars future in an interview with Entertainment Tonight, Morrison said, "We've got to bring him back somewhere." After Fett's roles as an enforcer in The Mandalorian and as a reigning crime lord in the Book of Boba Fett, yeah, he wasn't very intimidating as a crime lord. I was excited. I'll admit, I was very excited for that post-credit scene at the end of The Mandalorian season 2, where we saw him sit on the throne. He kills fucking Bib Fortuna and then sits on the throne of Jabba. I thought that was badass. But then the series comes out. And he's like, okay, I'm not gonna live. I'm not gonna rule through fear. Okay, I'm gonna rule through honor and respect. After just killing Bib Fortuna and taking the throne. After murdering this guy. We've got to see the old Boba Fett, Morrison said. We reintroduced him. We found out some stuff, but I think it's time to get him back to his badass ways. No two ways around that. Black Chrysanthemum is a character from the Star Wars Marvel comics, who I thought was really badass. The Wookiee bounty hunter. So they introduced him into this series, the Book of Boba Fett, and they kind of nerfed him. Like he can't kill a guy who's just laying in a bacta tank. Really? Come on. And and then Cad Bane shows up, another badass fucking character from the Clone Wars series, who's got history with Boba Fett. You know, kind of mentored him, and also has history with Obi-Wan. But yeah, Obi-Wan's not in this series, but he comes back and immediately gets killed by fucking Boba Fett. It's like, what was the point of that? I think we sort of have that scope to go back there. Morrison said of Fett's more ruthless portrayal in The Emperor Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but that's out of my control. I'll just see what happens. Yeah. So more on that in a sec, because he just recently, this was from June 2022. He just recently, just a couple of days ago, came out with a statement. I'm trying to find it. Mm. Oh no, this was May 2022. Yeah. There's more. There's more here. The Book of Boba Fett star Tremor Morrison admits that looking back, there are things he would have done differently on the show. The live-action Star Wars series released on Disney Plus in late December of last year, running through early February. It followed the titular Boba Fett as he escaped the Sarlacc pit and looked. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! You son of a bitch! Son of a bing! Son of a boom! They won't even let me X out of that. Fuck. Whoa. Here it is. Here it is. Feeling the love from all the fans, feeling that we've done something good, and the reaction I've been getting from the fans is overwhelming. I'm very proud and just grateful for the wonderful opportunity to play Boba Fett in the Book of Boba Fett. To work with Ming Na. We had a wonderful chemistry. It was so easy to work with her. She had been my confidant, and it was really a duo effort. When I was short on information, we had a wonderful crew around us. I had plenty of people to draw on. And even that was a journey for Boba Fett, from where we'd found him and where we were taking him. The introduction of the Tuscans, providing that nourishment, that family environment. Now that I'm looking back at it, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Things are great when you look back, but there are some things I may have done a little bit different. But again, just for me to work with John and be part of the Mandalorian family has just been quite phenomenal, really. Okay, so he tried to make uh good with that statement. Like, I actually like this experience, you know, like, uh, bring me back. And then, okay, let's see if I can find this, because this was, oh crap, I just X'd out of, let me try to, there it goes. Because he just made a statement like yesterday, day before, and it's very telling. Let me see if I can share my just in my photos. Because I took the picture, saved it, of this Twitter statement. Let's see if I can expand it. Oh, not that. Go back. Let's see. Open in File Explorer. Perhaps? Yes. Maybe that'll work. Uh-huh. Pics. Stop it. Let's see. I'll put it present. Oh, not that, not that. Crap. I'll share. I'll share my screen for a sec because I'm gonna. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work. I think that'll work. Yeah. Well, let me expand this. I was supposed to be in The Mandalorian season 3, but nobody rang me. I was waiting for the phone call in New Zealand, waiting and wanting to give up. Well, that Mando guy stole a few chapters of my book. It was painful watching him turn up with some black new lethal sword, and the way he turned up in my book of Boba, he just destroyed everybody. I'm sure this guy is ruining my show, but I couldn't say anything. I'm not the writer, so I have to bear it, I guess. I think there's a few changes going on. We also come under the big umbrella known as Disney now, too. So it's one of many previous few conversations we had in LA. The dialogue began like, "Oh, look, we're having a few changes. We're having a few cutbacks. And while you hear that on the different finish of the road, it's no good attempting to barter any more cash that's for positive. So we'll see what occurs." Yeah, all that, man. Uh, the Mando stole my show, stole my thunder, basically. And yeah, that's what happened. Like they nerfed Book of Boba Fett. They nerfed Boba Fett in favor of Mando. Like it's been Disney's playbook from the beginning. Like they wanted to take these original characters and replace them with their own characters. Legacy characters get destroyed, get shuffled off, and Disney characters become the new favorites. Mando replaces Boba. Ahsoka is set to replace Luke. They're giving her the entire heir to the Empire story. It's going to be a bastardized version, but essentially same with Thrawn as the main bad guy. And yeah, except for the girl characters, like we'll put them at the forefront. Like Leia is still prominent. That's why she replaced Luke in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series as the main focal point. And we'll get into that in a sec. Well, did I? Let's see. I think I covered that. Yeah, yeah. Because Deborah Chow, I think, said that too. Like she corroborated that it was originally supposed to be about Obi-Wan watching over Luke, and of course they went the other route. Now, there's more. Oh, there's more. Yes. Let's see. I covered that. Oh, yes. The Kathleen Kennedy tried to clarify the statements about not recasting the Star Wars characters with classic characters. And it's still possible to recast iconic characters from the Star Wars franchise in the future. Of course it is, because she realized that they're the main draw. Like Han, Luke, and Leia, Chewie, R2, 3PO. Those characters are the main draw. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Vader. I mean, these are the characters that made this franchise popular. So yeah, they're the main draw. But even characters that friggin' George Lucas came up with, like Maul, Qui-Gon, they're a big draw too. Star Wars fans may be seeing their favorite characters recast after all, because they're well-written characters, by the way. You know, like they're they were actually given a lot to work with in the story, like, and yeah, their stories actually went somewhere. Unlike the Disney sequel trilogy characters. Star Wars fans may be seeing their favorite characters recast after all. Kathleen Kennedy recently told Vanity Fair that following the box office flop Solo: A Star Wars Story, it's unlikely we will see any iconic characters from the franchise recast by younger actors. Yeah, it goes into Alden Ehrenreich playing Han Solo, Yeah, they just assumed, okay, we'll put the Star Wars brand on this. We'll bring back a character from the original trilogy, give them an origin story, and people will just show up. And it didn't happen. There should be moments along the way when you learn things. Now it does seem so abundantly clear that we can't do that. Yeah, that's what she said in that other article. Liam Neeson, I love that he returns as Qui-Gon every time they give him a call. Although, yeah, okay, yeah. There's a video of him that I totally forgot about. See, there's more to all this. Now Kennedy is backtracking her statements, leaving room for the possibility of recasting actors from the original trilogy in newer films. I never say never. It's certainly not something that we're doing with any intention right now. We're still talking about Lando with Donald Glover, for instance, but I don't think we would intentionally just look back at some of the characters like Luke and Leia and whatnot and decide arbitrarily to do a story. There would have to be a really strong reason why. So she's leaving the door open for future recastings, obviously. And now with this new technology, they can just take any actor and plop the character's face onto them, the previous actor's face. And Disney used a body double for Fisher and Cushing in Rogue One. Uh, I actually loved that. Peter Cushing was able to show back up because it made sense within the timelines right before the A New Hope. So I didn't mind that. I thought it was actually cool. But the Luke thing was kind of creepy at first. And yeah, it does kind of look creepy. So yeah, she backtracked on that. Let's see, next. So we got into some of the actors' criticisms of the shows. Now, what about the books? What is the Star Wars novel line been doing? Well, a few things. I don't know which came first, but they've turned Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan LGBTQ plus whatever. Like that's just one of the many things they've done that's turned people off from even buying these books. It's like, why are you doing this? Like, is everyone that works for Lucasfilm an activist or what? So you have a ton of characters in the High Republic series that are either non-binary, gay, or like at least what do you say, curious? Yeah, bi-curious. Uh, they constantly talk about their feelings. They constantly talk about their sexuality, and yeah, it focuses too much on that kind of thing and not enough on the actual story, and that's what turns people off. Disney turns Luke Skywalker into an LGBTQ plus character. Oh, if you also check Wikipedia, like they started putting like the pronouns in the bios, like they're really pandering. The reason Skywalker is now LGBTQ plus comes from a recent short story by activist writer Sam Maggs, according to Bounding into Comics. According to Wikipedia, the short story Luke on the Bright Side has Skywalker experiencing sexual feelings with another guy. There's a story in which he felt romantic feelings towards a guy, said Wikipedia. The short story Luke on the Bright Side. In June 2022, the story published by Lucasfilm Press appeared in Stories of Jedi and Sith. The book targeted 9 to 12-year-olds. Of course it did. Because this is what Disney's about now, is grooming kids. Bounding into Comics said the actual story doesn't appear to show any romantic feelings expressed by Luke Skywalker towards Sergeant Ray, whatever, Hollis of Alliance Special Forces, despite Sam Magg's clear history of pushing our activism into our stories. In a 2016 Vanity Fair article, J.J. Abrams said that Star Wars needed more non-straight characters. Of course he would say that, because he's one of those SJW types that likes to virtue signal. He was the one that said during the 2020 quote unquote summer of love, the riots, that quote, no more white comfort, end quote. Mark Hamill, the actor who portrayed Skywalker, suggested in the Vanity Fair story that Skywalker, of course, is gay. Again, he's another one of those woke activist actors. Fans are writing and ask all these questions. I'm bullied in school. I'm afraid to come out, said Hamill. They say to me, could Luke be gay? I'd say it is meant to be interpreted by the viewer. If you think Luke is gay, of course he is. You should not be ashamed of it. Judge Luke by his character, not by who he loves. Except that we've only ever seen Luke fall in love with women up until this frigging short story. But whatever. Tor, a science fiction and fantasy site, published an opinion piece entitled Do Not Make Luke Skywalker Another Tragic Gay Character, responding to Hamill's comments in 2016. If he were suddenly revealed as a gay character in lieu of all that, his sexuality could be perceived by the audience as tragedy. Poor Luke Skywalker, he devoted his life to others and never got the things that he wanted for himself. But look, in 2021, the original Star Trek, Captain Kirk, William Shatner, pointed out Skywalker has a wife and a son, Ben. Exactly. Mara Jade. He married Mara Jade. And before that, he was in love with a woman named Callisto. If you never read the books, you wouldn't know this, but yeah, he was in love with another Force user named Callisto even before he met Mara Jade. He's never had a history of being attracted to men. It's never ever been alluded to. These are just activists getting a platform to push their woke agenda onto a young audience. And people have noticed it and pointed it out, called it out, and yeah, the audience just isn't there anymore. Like, you have a very niche audience that you're pandering towards, Disney. The move of Skywalker towards diversity and representation is one of many moves by Disney to incorporate more LGBTQ characters and themes into their storylines, such as adding preferred pronouns for all the Star Wars characters. Recently, a controversy emerged regarding adding preferred pronouns to all Star Wars characters on Wikipedia, and I remember that. That was funny. Some felt that this was unnecessary and went against the original spirit of the space opera. Others thought it was an important step towards creating a more inclusive and diverse universe. Yeah, I also thought it was hilarious when Gina Carano was being bullied to put pronouns in her bio and she put beep bop boop, and that pissed the activists off. I thought that was hilarious. And I think she's gotten the last laugh because she's dodged a bullet with this crap series by getting out of it. It's the ratings have gone downhill. Oh man. Now, okay, so Luke got turned into LGBT Q plus ABCD whatever, and then Obi-Wan did. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. Yeah, this was cringe. I remember reading this. I mean, I didn't read the book, but I read like the excerpts that alluded to Obi-Wan being bisexual. It's like, what does this have to do with Star Wars? What does this have to do with the story? Why are these characters sitting around talking about their sexuality? That's never happened in Star Wars before. Why is this important now? All of a sudden. Oh, it's because you just want these characters to be gay. You just want to, I don't know, it's some kind of fucking trophy. It's like a crown, a jewel in the crown, of diversity, inclusion, LGBTQ representation, all that crap. Star Wars fans have been sent into a frenzy speculating the latest addition to the series has revealed iconic Star Wars character Obi-Wan Kenobi's sexuality. The much-loved character, played by Sir Alec Guinness in the original films and Ewan McGregor in both the prequel trilogy and the Disney Plus miniseries Obi-Wan Kenobi, is featured in the new spin-off novel Padawan, the latest addition to the Disney canon published on Tuesday. The young adult novel, written by author Kirsten White, revolves around a teen Obi-Wan attempting to prove himself while apprenticing under Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson in the films. Social media users quickly highlighted one passage that appears to show the Jedi in training questioning his sexuality, with many concluding it confirms he is bisexual. In the passage, Obi-Wan is being quizzed by another male teenager, Casul, about romantic relationships. Obi-Wan doesn't appear to have considered the option and awkwardly tries to change the subject. He then grows flustered as Casul propositions him if he is ever curious. Yeah, this is supposed to be like a teenage Obi-Wan, like 15 years old. Yeah, this is creepy. The character says, "Not many choices around here. I don't think love is in my future either, and I'm fine with that. As long as I have the power to keep my family safe, that's enough for me. Though I will admit, I've been curious about kissing and why Oj and Zybri enjoy it so much. So if you're ever curious too, let me know." The passage continues. Obi-Wan blushed. "I will let you know, I mean. Not that I will do that right now with you or anyone." Yeah, the writing is terrible, by the way. Would he ever get to a point where kissing someone felt like anything less than a betrayal of himself and the Jedi? And if he did get to that point, who would he want to kiss? The Lenahrans were confident and charismatic, which was attractive. But he couldn't imagine just kissing any of them. Maybe he didn't want to be with any of them, but rather to be more like each of them. Or maybe he wanted to kiss all of them. The fuck? Some fans just suggesting Obi-Wan was interested in both men and women, while others took it as an indication he was asexual or aromantic. Yeah, aromantic? What the fuck? Okay. Here's the part where Obi-Wan questions his sexuality and talks about being aromantic/bi. One fan wrote on Twitter, sharing the passage. Obi-Wan canonically confirmed as bi/ace. What the fuck is ace? Is a win for the history books, another said. A third wrote, Obi-Wan being canonically bi whatever, is the best thing to happen in 2022, and you can quote me on that. Others pushed back on criticism that the character already had a female love interest, Satine Kryze, in the 2008 animated TV series, The Clone Wars. I also remember there was another person he was romantically infatuated with in the Clone Wars young adult novel series. It's the really thin ones. I didn't read those, but like I remember reading the back of one of them and seeing that he was into this other apprentice. And Satine Kryze, if you don't know, is the sister of Bo-Katan Kryze, who got killed by Maul in the animated Clone Wars. The active pushback against Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan told Satine that he would leave the Jedi Order if she ever said so, if she ever wanted him to. So he was very much in love with her. The active pushback against Obi-Wan being bi from dude bros because he canonically likes women is so funny because clearly they don't know what the fuck bisexuality is, one wrote. Yeah, I'm sure you don't know what heterosexuality is either. There is, a person can be only attracted to one sex. You know that, right? Like, not everybody's attracted to both sexes. The Twitter account Star Wars Queers Watch, why is that a thing? Praised the author, describing Padawan as a story of self-discovery. In a cute, relatable scene in which Obi-Wan tries to figure out his attraction, any gender goes, but he's not sure if the romance is for him at all, they wrote. No clear label, but definitely on the bi or asexual aromantic spectrum. Okay. Star Wars Queers Watch listed several other queer kids Obi meets in the book, including their leader, Oj. Okay. Her non-binary shapeshifting partner, Zebri, Oj brother, Kasul, who's down to experiment with Obi. Yeah, we got that. And Mem, a girl who's not down for romance or attraction at all. Queerness in this book feels very casual, and I love it, they wrote. White has not yet commented on the revelations, but recently directed her Twitter followers to a February interview where she discussed the upcoming book. Also, before anyone else asks, Satine isn't in this novel, she said. Yeah, we get it. We get it. You don't want him to be attracted to women anymore. You just want him to be attracted to men now. Yeah. To be clear, when they say bisexual, they just want you to think he's gay. He's just, yeah. He's gay now. Okay, Obi-Wan's gay now, according to these guys. All right. So stupid. I got nothing against gay characters. It's just previously established characters that you retroactively make gay. That's very cheap and very stupid storytelling. Now, you could criticize J.K. Rowling for doing that with Dumbledore, but by all accounts, she planned to make him gay, and by the end of the seventh book, I think that's when she came up with the sixth or seventh book. Like she that's what I heard, that she plans to make him gay, but like never alluded to it really in the but people could make that inference by Grindelwald and Dumbledore's relationship, like why Dumbledore refused to kill Grindelwald. He captured him instead, brought him to Azkaban, and why Grindelwald ultimately decided to not betray Dumbledore and reveal where the Elder Wand was. So Voldemort killed him. So you could infer by all of that that these guys were more connected than, even like best friends, like they were actually in love. So the in story that makes sense. But with all this, with Obi-Wan, with Luke, doesn't make sense. Like Luke was always attracted to women. No, never indication that he was attracted to men at all. uh, same with same with Lando. They did that with Lando. They made him attracted to robots. Okay. He was always attracted to women. Leia and other women he's flirted with in the comics, the books. He was always flirting with women in the books. Mara Jade, I remember him flirting with her and other women that that came around. Winter. Um, but yeah, this is just activism taking a front seat, the story taking a back seat in Star Wars. We've seen it time and time again under Disney. Like before with George Lucas, is always the story came first. But yeah, it's coming last with Disney. So okay, so all that I mean, there's more to the High Republic that's turned people off, like the stupid rock character Geode, talking about sexuality with the characters. Is like, okay, first of all, you have a rock as a character, like it can't move or anything, and it's supposed to be a navigator of a starship. What the hell is that? But also it's talking to these characters, these young characters about their sexuality. That's creepy too, by the way. Like you have really young characters in these novels talking about they're exploring their sexuality, propositioning each other. They're minors, talking about all this shit in a book that is targeted to minors, to 9 to 12-year-olds. Like Disney, you're showing your hand. You're showing your creep hand. Stop. Now here is a very telling placement of books in a store. This will tell you right here, like what what people are actually buying. Like the Heir to the Empire series, more prominent on the stands than the shit that's being peddled by the High Republic authors. Half on and off the floor, bookstores are using older Star Wars novels to try to sell items on their dedicated High Republic shelf spaces. Barnes & Noble, the large bookstore and pop culture retail chain, has prominent shelf space dedicated to selling Star Wars, the High Republic novels, and merchandise. High Republic is the new young adult series for Star Wars that has created a number of risque controversies already. From a sentient rock having a sex talk with a young person, to Lando fantasizing about polyamorous robot interludes, to authors laughing about what they've been able to get into the books. It's quite the mess. Oh, by the way, some of those authors, the High Republic authors, are kind of racist. Look up Christina Ariel and some of her comments on white people. There was another one, Justina Ireland. Yeah, yeah. These are not great people writing for Star Wars. And despite what many of the media might try to say, it's been a disaster for Lucasfilm and Disney. It's a disaster they so far have refused to cancel, but it's a disaster nonetheless. So how bad is it? Earlier this week, we were tipped off that Barnes & Noble likely has a contractual obligation with Lucasfilm and Disney to provide prominent shelf space with a graphic marquee in order to sell the High Republic goods. We were also tipped off, however, that this has been an utter failure for selling the books, and so Barnes & Noble has taken to a different strategy altogether. Although the new books Disney wants to push are available on the shelf space made available to them, they have been pushed down towards the floor, and we're told this is purposeful. Apparently, there's no language in the contract that forbids Barnes & Noble from putting other Star Wars content on the shelving space. Yeah, as long as it has Star Wars in the title, I'm sure it's fine. And so they're doing exactly that. Instead of pushing High Republic on the High Republic section, which wasn't working, they're not using the area for decades old. They're now using the area for decades old Star Wars novels that are more popular. Yes. Look at that shit. Let's see, one High Republic there, one there, one. I think that's High. No, that's not High Republic, is it? That's Obi-Wan and Anakin. There's High Republic way at the bottom. It's fucking hilarious. Yeah, the rest is EU novels. And there's a Disney Star Wars book, Tarkin. But yeah, that's Wedge's Gambit. That's one of the X-Wing books. Shit, I can't see that. But yeah, there's an Obi-Wan book, Kenobi. Yeah, that was one of the expanded universe novels. There's the Darth Bane trilogy, Path of Destruction, Rule of Two, and Dynasty of Evil, and that's the Heir to the Empire trilogy there. Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. I think that might be Rogue Squadron there. I think it is. Yep. Lords of the Sith was a great Disney book. Master and Apprentice, also good. There's Dark Troopers and Revan. That's one of the old Republic novels. So there's mostly older stuff here, like it says. Note, Timothy Zahn novels are at the very top. It would seem bookstores know the extended universe for Star Wars, now relegated to non-canon, are better sellers than brand new Star Wars novels. No shit. There's a reason that Star Wars survived, like the quote unquote dark times when there were no movies coming out, because these great novels were coming out during that time. Like we were able to like satiate our thirst for Star Wars content, for great Star Wars content in between these movies. And the comics were great too. The majority of the books in the High Republic reserved space are not High Republic. Those that are have been moved to the bottom. Like seeing Lightyear toys in clearance aisles, there can be no better way of seeing consumer rejection than retail strategies. Yeah. Like, how's most of the money from the movie made? Merchandising. To quote one of my favorite movies, Spaceballs. Perhaps just as sad, all the Star Wars novels in this section are 50% off. How far the franchise has fallen. Exactly. Only propped up by a corporation with money to burn on reserved spaces, but not the foresight to create content consumers would want. Yeah, like this commenter said, it's infused with the woke crap. That's why people are rejecting it. Yeah, just why? This series has floundered from the very beginning. There's no interest in it whatsoever, but Lucasfilm just continue to push it, even though they know they're flogging a dead horse at this point. I'm beginning to think Disney have no interest in this franchise whatsoever and just sitting back watching Kathleen Kennedy burn money. Yeah, yeah, just like that. Shit. Oy. Now, let's see. I got into that. Oh, yes. All right, now. Let's see. canon. Okay, I'll do this alleged excerpt from The Art of Star Wars: The Mandalorian. And this comes to us from Bounding into Comics. It appears to debunk rumors regarding an internal civil war inside Lucasfilm about Star Wars. According to rumor mill sites, YouTubers, there's been an internal civil war inside Lucasfilm between Kathleen Kennedy's camp and the camp of like John Favreau. We will. I don't know if the truth will ever will out about that. But John Favreau doesn't seem to be happy though. Like, there's clips of him from Star Wars Celebration just not looking happy. when Dave Filoni's talking about his role in the Star Wars galaxy going forward, like it looks very much like Filoni's just taking Favreau's place as the head of this whole series. And he just might take Kathleen Kennedy's place as well, like as head of Lucasfilm. But according to this, WDW Pro, Walt Disney World Pro, detailed there was an internal power struggle over the controls of Star Wars. These fucking ads, man! I swear to God. As part of his scoop, it's hard to say. WDW Pro stated the ongoing battle over Lucasfilm's direction continues, with Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Favreau factions fighting over the studio. It's fairly well known at this point that the beef between Kennedy and Iger is real, given that Iger essentially ignored her in his memoirs. That's right. There was no mention of her. It's also hard to lose sight of how many projects Kennedy has seen fail at Lucasfilm. Star Wars Resistance, Star Wars Forces of Destiny, Star Wars Galaxy Adventures, Solo, and the sequel trilogy falling in revenues with each release. Not to mention that failed hotel, the what's it called? The Star Cruiser, Galactic Star Cruiser, and Galaxy's Edge. I mean, it's not as successful as it could have been with original trilogy characters, sequel characters, and whatnot, instead of the fucking sequel characters. And then no recognizable planets. You have this new planet that they created for the park called Batu that nobody gives a shit about. It looks like Iraq when you walk around. Oh, yeah. When the original plan was to use like Tatooine, Endor, and maybe Coruscant. I don't remember. There were 3 at least they wanted to use. But yeah, Naboo would have been cool. But oh well. And Favreau seemingly struck it out of the park with Mandalorian, though. A series for Disney Plus that even Iger was giving creative suggestions for and taking notes on each episode. Of course he was. To emphasize his point of this alleged brewing civil war, WDW Pro pointed to the then newly announced Taika Waititi film and the Leslie Headland female-centric series, which we now know is The Acolyte. WDW Pro explained, buried in the lead of Waititi directing a new Star Wars film, which doesn't look like it's going to happen now, which Kennedy has no creative control over, was confirmation of the female-centric Star Wars series being helmed by former Weinstein personal assistant Headland. But be ready, because it looks almost certain that a new narrative is being pushed by Kennedy loyalists and Lucasfilm. Fuck. And that narrative is that Headland was only a personal assistant for 1 year, and that being against her or her series is misogynistic, mean, and unfair. Go fuck yourself. Finally, he concluded, with all that said, Kennedy has essentially gotten her way time after time, outplaying Iger even if she has been hammered by segments of the fans, mostly by hiring and developing strong loyalty within her brand. Yeah, it's amazing. It's laughable, all the shit that she's gotten away with. In a follow-up to this rumor, YouTuber Doomcock would provide, yeah, that's a name, would provide more details on the alleged civil war inside Lucasfilm between Jon Favreau factions and Kathleen Kennedy factions. Doomcock claimed that Kennedy was indeed involved in the creation of The Mandalorian. Oh, yeah, and she's going to take full credit for that, I'm sure. He states, I am informed it was Kathleen Kennedy's idea that the Mandalorian should be protecting a child. Not a bad idea. It harkens back to Lone Wolf and Cub. It's a proven and effective formula, and indeed it has been successful. He would go on to reveal that it was Favreau's idea to make the child a baby Yoda, and that's where the civil war between Kennedy and Favreau factions began. Doomcock explained, my sources claim that in Kathleen Kennedy's mind, Baby Yoda was her idea, and she feels slighted that she didn't properly receive credit for the creation of Baby Yoda. Aside from being cheated out of her fair credit, according to my source, Kennedy was very unhappy with how the whole thing was implemented. Kennedy reportedly wanted so-called Baby Yoda to be Baby Yodette. I could see that. In short, she wanted the baby to be female, not male. He then claimed, furthermore, Kennedy wanted a female director for the pilot, and in defiance of that, Jon Favreau brought in Dave Filoni to direct, disregarding her wishes again. At that point, according to my source, the battle lines were drawn. I don't know how much credence this has, because Kennedy is the one who handpicked Dave Filoni to be part of this. Like, she's the one who paired him up with Favreau. So I don't see that being true. From there, Doomcock detailed tensions began to escalate when Kennedy learned from Bob Iger that Favreau, Filoni, and George Lucas were working on scripts for Mandalorian Season 3. In the course of that conversation, Kathleen Kennedy learned that Favreau, Filoni, and George Lucas himself were already working on a script. To say that this did not go over well was an understatement. Yeah, George Lucas hasn't been in the loop for this at all. Like he's shown up on set a couple of times in Season 1 at least. I don't know if he showed up for Season 2, but yeah, he's chilling at home, not really taking part in this. I don't see him working on a script with these two guys. Like he felt slighted. Like I touched on that earlier. He felt slighted when Force Awakens came out and he realized they didn't use his scripts. Like, he felt like he was betrayed. He even called Disney white slavers in an interview that his wife later apologized for. But that his true feelings came out in that interview. He sold his baby to these people that mistreated it. Indeed, I am told that Kennedy lost it, saying in effect, I will have it my way or I will burn this silly nonsense to the ground. And I've heard that quoted in other videos before. I could see her saying that because she has never really respected this franchise. She's never understood it. She never understood why people loved it in the first place. And yeah, I could see her saying that shit. So, okay. Got through to that. Let's see. What have I missed? All right. What else? Oh yeah, that's right. We'll get more into why the canon has been broken so much. Why is Kathleen Kennedy ignoring Star Wars Expanded Universe? Because she did an interview in early 2023, I believe, or late 2022. I don't remember when, but where she said, we have no source material to go off of. Bitch. You had a shit ton of novels and comics of source material, quote unquote, that you could have used for your stories, but you decided to throw them out and try to wing it. And look how that turned out. And now, yeah, now they're gonna cherry pick whatever the fuck they want, whenever the fuck they want, to try to win fans back because they've lost fans by the millions. Why is Kathleen Kennedy ignoring Star Wars Expanded Universe? Could we ever see Mara Jade or Grand Admiral Thrawn selling out theaters? Don't get your hopes up. By this time, the internet has poured over all the myriad of issues of modern Star Wars media, from characters like Snoke or Captain Phasma, who were pointlessly squandered with character arcs that went nowhere. Finn was too, and Poe, and Rey. Dos Ex Machinas, meandering contradictory plots, and abundant reshoots every aspect of Lucasfilm president. Well, look at the way they spell president. Kathleen Kennedy's vision of Star Wars has been criticized, fairly or otherwise. No, I think it's been very fairly criticized. The most glaring misstep, at least among the hardcore contingent, is the inability to stick to an overarching plot to the sequel trilogy. The blame must fall on the person in charge of Lucasfilm, a choice that ultimately led to the series flip-flopping between J.J. Abrams' overly conservative homages and Rian Johnson's radical deconstruction of the series. Then back again. Yeah, they gave him way too much creative freedom with that movie. The totality being a new trilogy cycle that no one person is wholly satisfied with, it's a conundrum that could have been easily skirted with a little planning and smart usage of the existing canon in the form of the Star Wars novels. The Star Wars Expanded Universe is, at this point, packed with stories waiting to be given an adaptation, with a built-in fan base that will show up. Yeah, just look at the Darth Bane trilogy and how popular that is. Like, if you adapted that shit, and made it good, good actors, director, everything, that could sell out theaters. For a behemoth like Disney obsessed with making money, it's shocking how they could be so ignorant. Yeah. Yeah, I was one of the people saying, Snoke. I was one of those people theorizing that Snoke could be Plagueis. I'm sure fucking Kathleen Kennedy doesn't even know who Plagueis is because I doubt she's even watched the Star Wars movies. But Palpatine's master, who he kills, and believed to be able to bring people back from death. But yeah, Plagueis, the novel Plagueis, Darth Plagueis is great, and if they ever adapt that with like Tom Hiddleston or somebody as young Palpatine, that could be great. They did like a miniseries because it's like a mob story basically, and he's rising through the ranks, as a politician, but in secret he's having people killed and whatnot. It's very very dark, and I love it. Yeah, just type Star Wars into Amazon or Goodreads, and you'll have too many books for the average person to read in their lifetime. Could we ever see Mara Jade or Grand Admiral Thrawn selling out theaters? Yeah, don't get your hopes up. You'd have better odds seeing the Loch Ness Monster, but the reason why might surprise you. As anyone who saw Rogue One will attest, watching fan favorite Kyle Katarn being written out of Star Wars canon and tossed into the proverbial trash bin sent a clear message from the start of the Disney era. Oh, okay, yeah, I got him mixed up with Dash Rendar, I think. Yeah, I think it was Kyle Katarn. Um, Another cool character though from the expanded universe. There were some cool Jedi characters that came later, like Corran Horn and Kip Duran, and shit, what was the Wookiee's name? I forget, but there was a Jedi Wookiee. Shit. It's been a while since I read these. There was a reptilian Jedi, like uh there was a droid, I think. There was a cool bounty hunter character. Well, it was like a crime boss, Talon Card, who they'll probably replace him with Hondo Anaka, Filoni's creation in the Ahsoka series. Yeah, they'll probably replace his role with Hondo, because the he helped Luke and Leia and Han in their fight against Thrawn, and he's also becomes like an ally of Mara Jade, like she works for him eventually, and so there were a lot of cool characters that came out of the expanded universe that they could have used. A lot of cool stories that they could have used, but they just decided, oh no, we can write shit better than these guys. These guys that have been writing for years. These very talented fucking writers: Michael Stackpole, Timothy Zahn, uh, Aaron Alston, Michael Reeves. Man, Michael Reeves, that's one of the greats. Even Oh yeah, James Luceno. Yeah, he's one of the main Star Wars authors that I love. Matthew Stover, Troy Denning, yeah, Dean Foster. I mean Alan Dean Foster. Yeah, who, oh yeah, that's another thing. They they have cheated authors out of their royalties for years, and Alan Dean Foster was one of the people who brought that to light. Like he sued them to get his royalties that they owed him. Because when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they tried to get out of contracts with their authors, the authors who had written these books that are still selling, by the way, that are selling more than the High Republic novels, as we said. They tried to cheat them out of their royalties, and yeah, not not cool, not cool. They tried to say like we take on all the assets of the previous owner of the company, but we do not take on the liabilities, which is not how contracts work. Is not how acquisitions work. So yeah, and there they were. But Disney has they have people running the company that all they care about is money. They don't care about people. They don't care about the products themselves. They just care about the money. It's sad. And they also care about nowadays it seems like they don't care about money so much as pushing an agenda, a stupid fucking agenda that people do not fucking care about. Virtue signaling everywhere. Some in the media praised the franchise for being forward-looking because they tossed out the Star Wars canon into the proverbial trash bin, sent a clear message from the start of the Disney era. The expanded universe was a dead-end street. Some of the media praised the franchise for being forward-looking, but that's disconcerting news for anyone who actually grew up with the franchise and looked forward to Disney bringing countless idle characters and storylines in the IP to theaters. The strategy was baffling. Defending the financial struggles of Solo and Rogue One, yeah, she just tried to excuse it by saying, every one of these movies is a particularly hard nut to crack. There's no source material. We don't have comic books. We don't have 800-page novels. We don't have anything. It's like longtime fans groaned in collective anguish, realizing Kennedy was jettisoning a massive portion of the lore fans had been getting invested in for 40 years. Yeah, right. When I saw that, I laughed my fucking ass off bitterly. Because I'm like, bitch. What the fuck, man?
You serious?
What kind of shit is that?
We don't have 800-page novels. No. But we got like 800, 300-page novels. Ryan Johnson explains this. Fuck that. Anyone who has a passing knowledge of the Star Wars world will know her statement is patently untrue. Exactly. And that it. Will you stop doing that, you piece of shit? Oh my god, with this site. And then it probably explains why the Star Wars sequel trilogy is of such erratic quality. No one involved in the highest decision-making positions at Disney was really well versed in the series, in communication with the fanbase, or had a deep knowledge of the pre-existing stories that had kept Star Wars successful between the long hiatuses in movie theaters. Yeah, it would have been nice to have a guy named George Lucas around, or yeah, or anybody that was like a fan of Star Wars, not just a casual fan, but a hardcore fan. It did not pan out as well as Disney producers hoped. For The Last Jedi, Kennedy and the revolving door of directors and writers were painted in a corner due to some unforeseen drama. Abrams never pretended like it all went to plan, the too many cooks in the kitchen approach, weaving a messy route for each subsequent director writer to stick to via Esquire. However, little has changed since. The upcoming untitled Ryan Johnson trilogy, which isn't happening, doesn't offer much hope that anyone at Disney has the motivation to dip into the reservoir that is hundreds of novels, animated series, and video games. Scripts appear to be written on the fly per Lucasfilm directive, and that doesn't look to be changing anytime in the foreseeable future. Based on the roadmap made public, only one expanded universe character will receive a TV or movie, and that's Ahsoka, co-created by Lucas before he sold the rights away in 2012. Say what you will of the quality of the prequel trilogy, but you have to credit Lucas for sticking to a plan, bringing in the right writers and directors only to flesh out the general outline, never at the cost of muddying the large story. There is, in Kennedy's defense, a much simpler and more logical explanation to the banishment of Star Wars canon than mere ignorance. After the sale of the rights, Disney was offered notes from Lucas for his unfilmed trilogy series set back around 2013. These notes outlined what the sequel trilogy would have looked like. Disney rebuffed him. J.J. Abrams telling Vanity Fair, Disney and Kathy decided they should consider other options, fearing that they might wind up with another Phantom Menace situation on their hands. That in reference to the poor reception to the child actors and plot lines in the prequel films. Look only at the Red Letter Media critique for further insight. Though it still isn't clear if Kennedy bothered to acquaint herself with anything in the expanded universe, since she has surely received thousands of mean tweets alerting her of her mistake after claiming there were no books or comics. Oh, save us from mean tweets. Oh. Have you ever considered getting off of social media if you don't like mean tweets? Stupid. Hey, but this right here, blaming the child actors, the plot lines. There was nothing wrong with the plot lines. It was it was mostly the dialogue that people criticized. The story was there. The child actors. It's very hard to find good child actors. There are very few of them. I'd say there are a couple in like Stranger Things, things like that. And you have to have a director who's very good at working with the actors and getting the best performances out of them. Lucas wasn't surrounded by the best people. Like he was surrounded by yes men when he did the prequels. Before that, he had people who would question things, who would help him improve the product. Just like his wife, his ex-wife, Marsha Lucas, who was very instrumental in editing the original trilogy. Well, at least the first movie. Yeah. But yeah, that's why the prequels they weren't as good as the original trilogy because he was basically he was focusing more on the plot than the dialogue and the technology more than the character development. But yeah, this is just them trying to excuse Kathy's ignorance or lack of care, I guess you could say. Ironically, so it seems the fan base is indirectly responsible for killing off their beloved expanded universe. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. Internet outrage eats its own tail. The backlash to the Phantom is a nightmare situation for any executive. But I feel like by the Revenge of the Sith, things have been improved. Like the outlook. I mean the view of the prequels, the general feeling toward the prequels have been improved by Revenge of the Sith because most people were satisfied by that. Most people were satisfied with that wrapping up the saga, and George was forgiven. Basically, I was always a George Lucas apologist. I agreed with every decision he made. I didn't give him a fuck, like, because it got me more Star Wars, and his storytelling has always been good to me. Like I've always enjoyed his storytelling. So yeah, but hey, what's wrong with Yaddle? Not that we're mourning the loss of Jar Jar or Yaddle, but it still leaves hundreds of great characters tossed out with the bathwater. Yeah, yeah. All out of a misplaced sense of caution, a decision that only resulted in alienating a chunk of the most loyal and bankable part of the fan base. Yeah, people are still buying. People still to this day are buying prequel merchandise all the time. I was tempted to buy an Ayla Sakura Black Series figure just yesterday, but I'm not giving Disney my money. Fuck them. If I buy it, I'll do it secondhand. But yeah, this guy was talking to me at the store about buying like the Legos. He wants to buy the Clone Trooper helmet Legos, and I was just like, have at it. Like, I'm not going to discourage anybody from from buying what they want from getting involved in the franchise. I like that people are still loving it, but what Disney's done to it is just turned me off. The whole gray Jedi thing, yeah, that's another debate. This is why you have ignorant people now saying, "Oh, there's no good and evil in Star Wars." Like, no, there is. There is. You really think the Emperor's not evil? Like, what? There's something wrong with your morality. So, so we got that. So then you get articles like this, and we're almost done. I'm just like touching on like why canon is broke. Here's how to fix it. Okay, this guy's gonna tell us how to fix it. All right, David Miller. Star Wars canon has made a habit of overriding printed content with screen media, but one system from the Legends era may be the key to fixing it. Star Wars canon, in its current form, is broken, but at least he's admitting that. But there is a way to potentially fix it using a system from the now bygone Legends continuity. Or you could just use the shit that Dave Filoni came up with on the fly, the world between worlds. Since 1990, whoa, my bad. Since 1977, Star Wars has been a transmedia franchise, with numerous original stories supplementing the live action films and other mediums. Until its rebranding as Legends and designation as an alternate continuity, the expanded universe managed to keep a generally tidy timeline, maintaining respect for established lore and occasional retcons to avoid contradictions. The current canon thus far has had a far less consistent timeline, necessitating the revival of a Legends era tier system to partially mitigate the issue. The canonicity of Star Wars Legends is understandably often called into question, especially with a new and more mainstream canon currently dominating the perception of the Star Wars franchise. Before its Legends rebranding, the Star Wars Expanded Universe was repeatedly said by Lucasfilm officials and creatives to be the franchise's official canon. If this was not the case, Lucasfilm would not have renamed it Legends and announced the start of a new canon in April 2014. Yeah, that was Disney. The Legends era tier system was not needed until perhaps the continuity's final years, but it is now more necessary than ever to fix Star Wars' current canon, whose timeline contains far more continuity issues. Related, Star Wars canon is now meaningless. Yeah, pretty much. Like before, it kind of meant something. Like we saw shit in the movies affect the comics and whatnot. We had characters from the comics show up in the movies or get mentioned at least. Quinlan Voss, you know, and Ayla Sakura got featured in episode 3 after becoming popular in the comics. I mean, she was in episode 2 before, but like I think there was a reason why she showed up in episode 3. Like people were actually attached to this character. They wanted to see her story close out, and she got killed on Felucia. I think it was Felucia. Yeah. Uh, if you didn't know though, Quinlan Voss survived the purge. She actually in Star Wars Tales, he meets Han Solo, but that was considered non-canon though at the time, I believe. But still, he did survive the purge. Lucasfilm gave Star Wars a fresh start in April 2014, clearing the slate for the sequel trilogy and establishing a new canon with only 6 George Lucas films and the Clone Wars animated series remaining. Not only would this maximize creative freedom for new movies, but it would also allow Star Wars to maintain a more consistent continuity. Ultimately, the creative freedom afforded to the sequels resulted in 2 films that accessibly replicated the original Star Wars trilogy, and a third which borrows heavily from the Legends era Dark Empire comics. Yeah, with the cloned Emperor coming back. Yeah. But the current Star Wars canon is even more problematic in its non movie material. Star Wars canon TV shows frequently contradict printed canon content. While some issues, like Yoda's lightsaber being destroyed in Marvel's 2017 Darth Vader comics but reappearing in the Book of Boba Fett, can be fixed with a retcon, other continuity snarls are impossible to repair. Portions of E.K. Johnston's 2017 Ahsoka novel are invalidated by the Clone Wars Season 7 and Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. Yeah, so they're violating their own fucking continuity now, of course. The origin of Kanan Jarrus was initially depicted in Greg Weisman's Kanan the Last Padawan comic run. Yeah, I actually have that. before it was overwritten by the pilot episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch. Of course it was. It is unfortunately clear that printed material matters less than screen media. Yeah, it always did. But what we were told by Disney when they bought Lucasfilm was that everything matters. Like, everything ties into everything else. Like, all the books, the comics, from now on, they are canon and, irreversible. Like, but as we've seen in recent years, that is not the case. They've contradicted themselves countless times. This is notably not the first time that the Star Wars franchise has been plagued by continuity issues. Yeah, we know that. 2008, Clone Wars was assumed to take place in the then expanded universe, yet it constantly contradicted the lore from the original Clone Wars multimedia project. The majority of the Clone Wars continuity issues cannot be mitigated by retcons, so it ought to be considered only part of the current canon. Dave Filoni himself has said that he does not consider the series to be part of the original expanded universe, making it perhaps retroactively the first canon exclusive property. Yeah, so Disney considers the 2008 Clone Wars series part of their canon. Before it became Legends, the Star Wars expanded universe used a system of tiers as a means of mitigating continuity issues. The highest tier was G canon. See, I wasn't even aware of this. I just took everything, as part of the same fucking story when I read them. The highest tier was G canon, comprised of material created by Lucas himself. Among the tiers below it was C canon, which included Legends material from the early 90s to the Legends rebranding, and S canon, referring to older expanded universe material such as Marvel's classic Star Wars comics. This clever system served as a tiebreaker in case two works conflicted with one another, but it was ultimately not necessary for maintaining the Star Wars Legends era's continuity. I'm reading this, realize Star Wars universe for the first time will be fucking confused by all this by all this material. Like, yeah, I could see how somebody could get turned off just by reading this. Star Wars Legends era tier system was never needed, as expanded universe creatives simply respected the characterizations and lore of both the live action saga films and the franchise's established non movie material. Marvel's Star Wars comics laid the foundation for Mandalorian history and culture, but later works such as Hayden Blackman's Jango Fett Open Seasons and Karen Travis's various novels worked with their lore instead of invalidating them. Yeah, Karen Travis wrote the Republic Commando series, and she also wrote some of the Legacy of the Force books, especially the ones showcasing Boba Fett, like Bloodline. I think it's Bloodlines. It's called, yeah, with Boba Fett on the cover. You see, so she contributed to the Mandalorian lore very heavily, which I'm sure a lot of it was contradicted with the Disney canon now. The Dark Lady of the Sith, Lumaya, appears in materials considered C canon and S canon, but none of the works contradict each other. When the Legends continuity did run into problems, creators would use retcons instead of decanonizing projects. Yes, it was all part of the same story, ultimately. Boba Fett had several different origins throughout Marvel's comics, his Tales of the Bounty Hunter short story, and the prequel trilogy, but Legends establishes that his previous backstories were either intentional fabrications or instances of another character masquerading as Fett. Yeah, that's where Jaster Muriel comes in, the guy posing as Boba Fett. And but there's a trilogy set right after he gets out of the Sarlacc pit. The Bounty Hunter Wars, I believe it's called. It's pretty good. The Thrawn trilogy describes a significantly different Clone Wars than what is shown in the films, but the Clone Wars multimedia project and other Legends stories reconcile the two different depictions. Ultimately, there was no need for tiers for most of Legends' history since creators ensured that all material counted and fit alongside each other and the saga films, even if it meant employing retcons. The only time Star Wars canon tiers became necessary was when 2008's The Clone Wars debuted and began contradicting the original Clone Wars multimedia project at every turn. And he just repeated himself. Whatever. Lucasfilm added the T canon tier for the series specifically, but this did not prevent the Clone Wars era from becoming a muddled mess of major continuity confusion. The Clone Wars should never have been placed in the Legends continuity, as not only did Filoni not see it as part of the same universe, but Lucas also insisted on disregarding established lore. Yes, then this is where he gets into, Lucas treated Star Wars Legends inconsistently. Lucas has, for better or worse, treated continuity in Star Wars inconsistently, and Legends is no exception. Lucasfilm also often vetoed or tweaked story ideas from Marvel's Star Wars comics to make sure they fit with the films themselves, and Lucas was heavily involved in numerous Legends era projects such as Shadows of the Empire. That's where they introduced Prince Caesar. I think that's how you pronounce it. I forget his species name, but he's like reptilian. Uh, exudes pheromones where he can control people. Like he does that to Leia. Lucas personally blocked certain time periods and characters from being explored in the expanded universe, and often brought planets, starships, and even characters from Legends into the films. Yeah, like I said, Ayla Secura, Coruscant, the Outrider. Yeah, Coruscant was in a novel before it was in the films. And Sakura was in the comics. Star Wars Legends gave Darth Vader, but oh yeah. By the end of Lucas's involvement with the Star Wars franchise, however, his attitudes toward continuity in general and Legends in particular had significantly changed. Lucas encouraged many of the Clone Wars continuity contradictions, and notably told Filoni in one instance that continuity is for wimps. Like what? Okay. I guess he didn't want to be restricted by a set storyline, but he's always been like that. From the first movie, there were so many drafts that he went through. Like ultimately, I don't think the final product even resembled the original draft. Uh there's actually a collection of Star Wars comics called Infinities where it actually tells the original story that he had in comic book form, and it's pretty neat actually. And there are other stories like one where Yoda ends up training Leia instead of Luke. It's a neat collection. Star Wars Infinities. Marvel Comics put that up. So ultimately, Lucas's support for and later opposition to Legends is irrelevant since the Star Wars franchise became a collaboration of creators once it transcended his saga films. Since the Clone Wars never fit into the Legends timeline and all other materials fit neatly together for the most part, the Star Wars canon tier system was never needed for the expanded universe. A tier system is, however, more necessary than ever for the post 2014 Star Wars canon. Yeah, this is where it's gotten way more muddled, which regularly has screen media overwrite printed material. Novels and comic books are, unfortunately for their creators, now perpetually in a precarious position, where any given TV series can overwrite them. Some properties, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, even come dangerously close to contradicting other TV shows, and the saga films themselves. Well, it does contradict them. Leia in the original movie seems to not even like know Obi-Wan like personally, yet she's gone on this adventure with him in the Obi-Wan series. Yeah, that doesn't jibe. It is time for Lucasfilm to establish tiers for the current canon. The main saga films should be at the highest tier, followed by spin-off films, TV shows, and video games. Sadly, printed media would almost certainly be at the lowest tier, as it is the most commonly overwritten form of Star Wars material. A tier system similar to what Star Wars Legends once had would not fully repair the broken state of Star Wars canon, but it would help to manage its ongoing continuity issues and set expectations for both creators and fans. And then and then you got this article at the bottom. Why Star Wars canon still matters and always should. Obviously, by this article, according to this article, it doesn't matter at all anymore. I don't think it does either. It's sad to say, but yeah, doesn't fucking matter anymore. Just use the world between worlds to rewrite the whole damn thing. That's what people were thinking would happen with the sequel trilogy. Actually, was they just decanonize it, like just rewrite it, or you know, how do you say? People were thinking that the sequel trilogy would be erased, and that's not the case. Obviously, with the last season of Mandalorian, Like they're leading right into Jake Skywalker, the terrible fucking sequel trilogy. Then we come to this article. And I think this will be the last one. I've gone over 2.5 hours now talking about this shit. And this might be, oh man, maybe I'll stop talking about Star Wars someday. But this is something that I cared about so much. That's why I'm still talking about it, even though fucking Disney has ruined it for me. Disney's mismanagement of Star Wars brutally explained by Industry Insider. Although Star Wars has released several successful series on Disney Plus, I don't know how successful really. Andor certainly wasn't. The franchise's cinematic releases have suffered from mismanagement. A Hollywood insider explains how Disney mismanaged Star Wars despite the success of the franchise's streaming series. George Lucas changed pop culture forever in 1977 with the release of Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, and began one of the largest media franchises of all time. Star Wars remained under Lucas's leadership until 2012, when the visionary filmmaker sold his production company, Lucasfilm, to the Walt Disney Company. Chosen by Lucas, Indiana Jones producer Kathleen Kennedy now leads the Star Wars franchise as the president of Lucasfilm, beginning a new era of Star Wars. Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm brought several changes to the Star Wars universe, which received mixed responses from fans of the franchise. Disney's plan included a Star Wars sequel trilogy that began with Episode 7, The Force Awakens, in 2015 and would complete the Star Wars saga. The franchise also began a Star Wars story anthology film series, which consists of the 2016's Rogue One and the 2018's Solo. Hashtag Solo lost money. And has released several streaming series on Disney Plus, such as the critically acclaimed The Mandalorian. Well, it certainly was at first. While the success seen from The Mandalorian led Disney to pursue a full slate of live-action Star Wars shows that includes the recently released Rogue One prequel Andor and the upcoming Ahsoka, the production of new Star Wars films is all but halted. Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron was just removed from Disney's release schedule. And Taika Waititi's untitled film has yet to report any progress. The move away from Star Wars movies has led some to question the franchise's direction and Kennedy's leadership. Now, reporter and Hollywood insider Matthew Belloni explains the main problems Star Wars currently faces. In a recent episode of its podcast, The Town, Belloni discusses Lucasfilm's current direction under Disney and gives a complete breakdown of how he believes Kennedy has mismanaged the franchise, specifically looking at its film releases. Okay, let's get into this. Even though Andor apparently is good, this new Star Wars series that Tony Gilroy did, so keep that in mind. But I believe But I believe the management of the Star Wars franchise has been abysmal since Disney took over Lucasfilm. Yeah, look at Andor's performance. It hasn't gotten the viewership that they wanted. It might be good, but people don't give a shit anymore. Like enough to watch people are gonna tune into Obi-Wan regardless because it's Obi-Wan and Boba Fett, of course. But you saw the viewership drop off, and then Andor nobody gave a crap about because this guy was barely even a character in a prequel to a prequel who gets killed at the end. So why would anybody give a crap? It's kind of why people didn't show up for Solo too, because he had just died badly. Like people did not give a shit. The same thing with Black Widow too. People had just seen her die, and she didn't even get like a funeral. And then they come out with their a prequel movie about her. Like they should have done a Black Widow movie years before. But yeah, Disney apparently didn't think people would show up for it. So who's the real misogynist? Whatever. If you go back now, in retrospect, and look at how they handled this franchise, it's awful. I mean, the fact that they rushed to get Force Awakens into theaters, first it was supposed to come out in summer of 2015, then they finally acknowledged that, oh, we're not going to make that. But they didn't delay it. They put it out, they put it only into December of 2015. Yeah. Seen a similar situation with fucking Justice League from Warner Brothers. So they had to rush to finish that one. They had no idea what the next episode would be when they made Force Awakens. That, I am told, was a J.J. Abrams decision, basically saying, let's just make this one good and then we'll figure out the rest. Then they let Ryan Johnson do his episode, and he made a bunch of changes to the franchise that they didn't know how to deal with on the third in that trilogy. J.J. Abrams basically pulled the Emperor out of his ass. They were like, they were like, oh, the big bad guy is going to be the Emperor, even though he wasn't in the previous two movies. Right, real smart. So the management there has been awful. They have basically put a pause on the movies. Kathleen Kennedy has hired director after director to try to figure out what these stories are going to be, because she has no fucking idea. She hasn't had any plan that's worth greenlighting. The Rogue Squadron movie that Patty Jenkins was going to direct, that was just officially taken off the calendar for next December, even though everyone in Hollywood knew that that wasn't happening because they couldn't come up with a storyline they wanted to do. And that's despite having a big announcement where Patty Jenkins got up at an investor day for Disney and talked about how great her Star Wars movie was going to be, but they didn't know what was going to be yet. It was a big PR mistake to do that. Yeah, that's why you saw a halt for a little while, like on Kathleen Kennedy announcing shit. Like it seemed like Disney had told her to stop announcing shit. But she keeps doing it. The Ray movie. Who the fuck's gonna go see that? My God. They're gonna pair her with Baby Yoda, I'm sure. Get people to go see it. People will go squee. But yeah, the Rogue Squadron thing, just using previously established name. As I said, the Rogue Squadron was from the EU, also the expanded universe, and that's where Rogue One stemmed from. The name for Rogue One. They just keep banking on things that have come before, even though they said all this shit was, non-canon. They weren't going to use it. They just keep cherry picking for nostalgia bait. They want they say they don't want these 50-year-old men, these these old fans of the franchise, that like they don't need them, but they keep trying to win them back with these member berries at the same time. It's funny when you think about it. Like that's why Thrawn is back. That's why they'll probably use Mara Jade eventually. They've already used Thrawn's bodyguard. I think his name was Rook. Rook. Uh, yeah. Jerus Sabaoth probably will show up. The insane clone Jedi that was in the Heir to the Empire. Other characters like Winter, maybe Talon Card, unless they replace him with Hondo Anaka, like I said. So they got very lucky with that Favreau made The Mandalorian what it was. But look how that's gone. And all the other shows have come in that vein, and they're fine. But no, they're not fine, dude. Have you seen these fucking shows? But Star Wars is no longer special. The movies are dormant, and that's a big problem. Yeah, this is a big movie franchise, and now it's a direct-to-streaming, direct-to-video fucking franchise. I strongly believe they need a change at Lucasfilm. And yeah, he's not wrong. Star Wars' future needs fresh ideas. As Bellany bluntly states, Kennedy's main problem is that she has no plan for new Star Wars films. Yeah, and she'll fucking deny that till the cows come home. Like there was an interview at Star Wars Celebration where she said like these movies are not canceled. Like they're not shelved. They're still in development. But development is like a complicated process. It's like no, you shelved them. Like stop trying to play semantics here. The sequel trilogy, while commercially successful, but there were diminishing returns, that needs to be pointed out, can be criticized for imitating the original trilogy storylines, with the Emperor's return and the dynamic between Rey, Finn, and Poe echoing Luke, Han, and Leia. In light of such criticism, it seems the sequel trilogy owes its success to nostalgia. Yeah, no shit. A tactic that Disney can't continue much longer. Yeah, they're seeing people get tired of their live action remakes of their classic cartoons, and they're seeing people get tired of the constant nostalgia baiting that leads to shit shows. It's getting tired. It's getting worn out. People are starting to turn away. This is contrasted with the Mandalorian's immense success. Unlike Disney's Star Wars films, excluding Rogue One, The Mandalorian completely discarded previous Star Wars storylines revolving around galactic strife and focused more on the solitary journey of Din Djarin, who you could argue is just a copy and paste of Boba Fett, as he attempts to balance his creed with his responsibility to the child he finds. This change in direction reinvigorated Star Wars in a way the sequel trilogy couldn't manage. It is obvious that Disney wanted to capitalize on the Mandalorian success because all the franchise's upcoming releases are Disney Plus series following in that direction. Still, focusing on shows over movies wouldn't be a problem as Star Wars continues to explore new ideas, like Andor's slick, mature tone in the spy thriller genre. What is the problem is Lucasfilm not devoting the proper time or resources to create genuinely new stories, instead recycling material that relies on nostalgia. Hopefully, the removal of Rogue Squadron from the release schedule means that Lucasfilm's management has learned from its mistakes. Yeah, right. And that audiences can look forward to fresh ideas in future Star Wars films. I fucking doubt it. Oh my god. That's all I have for today.
Look, this isn't Windex, but it's just as good. It's the store brand.
No, you'd leave a film.
I'm okay with the film. Just use it.
No, I no can clean.
Shit. Hello.
Mr. Darth.
Oh, yes, sir. Quiet. It's the Emperor.
Oh,
it's the Emperor.
tell him I no can do Friday.
Okay. Sir,
he need to kill he cannot drop me on
hello?
Friday.
I can't hear you. I'm going to the knee pad. I'm going to call you from the knee pad.
I'm in the rain.
What is thy bidding, my master?
Hey, I'm downloading all my music to my iPod because I'm getting rid of my CDs. Do you have any desire for Natalie Merchant's Tiger Lily?
No.
Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill?
No.
You sure? This thing was unstoppable. This was the soundtrack to my 95. To my 95 and my 96, actually.
No, thank you.
Richard Marx, Hold On to the Night?
Yes! If you're giving stuff away, yeah, sure.
All right, listen. It turns out Anakin Skywalker's son is still alive. I'm gonna need you to find him and turn him.
Really? Well, maybe I can make him go by, but all the way is gonna be tough.
Oh, I mean, turn him to the dark side.
Well, yeah, I thought that's what you... Oh, of the Force?
Yes.
Oh, I'll get him over to the dark side. I'll just show him our recruiting video.
Thanks to the training I received in the Empire, I have all the skills I need to make it in the real world. The Empire GI Bill helped me finish school. Hey, wait up!
And I met my wife in the service. We had our honeymoon on Alderaan.
Good thing we took pictures, huh?
The Empire. Chasing rebel scum. Killing Luke's aunt and uncle. Telling people to move along. The Empire. Our ships are big triangles.